Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fanfiction podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Today, we're diving into a brand new story. What if Belle became a solo adventurer? Part 3-inch. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Chapter notes. Belle becomes stronger in a dungeon. What? A new chapter of solo leveling Belle in only a month. That's crazy. Okay. But in all honesty, I hadn't planned to update this at all for a while until I updated some of my other fics, but then the solo leveling anime suddenly came out, and I just became fired up. I swear, I could not stop smiling the whole time watching those first few episodes. I couldn't just not write this after seeing them. I swear it looked clean. So yeah, another chapter of impulsive writing. Enjoy it. I know I did writing it. This is fine. No, really, it is. So what if he's trapped in a newly made dungeon in a saw? So what if the only way to escape was to go to the very end and slay a boss monster who could very well be like one of those statues from the king's chamber? It's not like this is a problem, no siree. There's nothing wrong with being trapped by a mysterious entity trying to get him killed as much as it's trying to make him stronger. It's fine, it's fine. It doesn't bother him, it bothers him. It bothers him a lot. I seriously have to go and conquer an entire dungeon by myself. Belle sweat nervously as he stared down at the menacing stairs leading down into a smoky, clouded trail. He couldn't even see that far down with how thick the darkness was. It made this whole situation even more imposing. And yet, he can't exactly go back now, can he? Stealing his resolve with a frustrated sigh, Belle pulled out his dagger from his sheath and held it firmly, eyes glaring down the darkness below. Okay, it's only E rank. You can do this. Giving himself this small reassurance, Belle started descending into the unknown. As he did, he continued to rationalize his situation regarding the level of danger he'd be facing. The dungeon is only E rank, the same ranking as his dagger and chest plate, both of which are the mere basics of equipment. So, theoretically, this dungeon should be on a similar basis, right? He could only hope. The aspiring hero moved down the stairs cautiously, following the spiraling path for about half a minute until arriving at Arario's saw system. It wasn't what he had expected. From what Belle had read about the saws, yes, he had looked them up to know the environment just as he does with the dungeon. They were constructed entirely out of stone, into a 6-meter-wide tunnel, with footpaths lining the edges as water flowed in the center. But what was unique about them were the purple grates set up at each drain made entirely from magic stones. These grates would purify the saw water of Arario as it was flowing out, filtering it to be no cleaner than spring water. This ensured that any lakes or rivers draining the sewage would never be contaminated. It was all rather impressive to Belle, who had grown up in a small village not even on a map. But what he found wasn't the clean tunnel full of clear flowing water. What Belle found instead was a channel tunnel that looked as if it had been abandoned for years. Weeds had grown. Between the hundreds of cracks in the surrounding stones, the water carried litter from chipped stones to more weeds, and a thin, mysterious haze covered the lower bottom of the area, including just over the water. The mist wasn't anything that obstructed Belle's vision in any way, but it still gave a faint coldness that brought a shiver down his spine. Did the system do this? Ruin an entire saw just to set up a test for me? Belle frowned as his eyes trailed around the area. The magic lamps lighting the walls didn't help him see further ahead, only faintly lighting the otherwise dark place. Not wishing to be suddenly ambushed, he kept going at a slower, cautious pace, being vigilant for anything. It was about 5 minutes in the channel that Belle sensed something. The boy immediately held his blade in a reverse grip as he braced himself for whatever was in the darkness ahead. It was moving in his direction, and his instincts told him it was strong, and perhaps beast-like, considering the musky smell of an animal he was picking up. His eyes widened when it finally stepped close enough for him to see. Belle saw a large wolf-like monster with red fur and glowing red eyes. However, what truly shocked him was that in addition to a set of jagged, barred teeth, the wolf had its entire bottom mouth made of metal, with sharp fangs pointing up. And like all the other monsters before, this one also had a name projected above its head. Steel Fang Raikan. It wasn't a monster that Belle had ever heard of, so that meant it should be found even lower than the 6th floor of the dungeon, right? However, why does this one have an orange name? He had meant to figure out the colors at some point. First, there had been the giant centipedes, with red names, and then there were all the monsters in the dungeon that only had white names, from the goblins to the new war shadows he'd recently been facing. What did it mean? No time to think about it. Belle rightfully thought, seeing as the growling wolf had gone. From stalking forward to diving at him with its open jaw. Belle jumped to the side, his light body making it so that he effortlessly leaped across the water and to the footpath on the other side. "Thank you, system," he preached, knowing that it was because of the daily quests that his body had become so nimble and flexible in a way different than just the speed of his agility. Stat. Belle turned around but was aghast to see the wolf already leaping at him again, the canine. Also making it across the water with one jump with its jaw ready to clamp down on him. On reflex, the boy swerved his body and avoided the monster, who hit the wall where he had just stood. But rather than any sort of damage being done to it, the wolf clamped down its mouth and tore through the stone of the wall, pulling its head back before flinging the debris out of its mouth, eyes already on him again. Suffice to say, Belle was a little intimidated. But he didn't have any time to waver, for the Rykhan once more leaped at him, a pattern that he was starting to notice. This time, Belle jumped forward and flipped through the air, the monster soaring underneath him as he did. He landed into a crouch, only to pause at what he had just done. "Oh wow, that was actually kinda cool." "Focus, you idiot." His sense of self-preservation yelled. Belle's eyes widened as his senses screamed to dodge, so he ducked and weaved his body to avoid yet another pounce from the monster. After it passed him, he stood up straight and finally got into a stance as it landed a few feet away, turning back to the boy with a growl. "It's strong." He could tell that this steel-fang Rykhan was much stronger than any of the monsters he'd faced in the dungeon so far, including the war shadows and frog shooters he started fighting recently on the 6th floor. It may have simple attack patterns like an upper-floor monster, but it was fast and wasted no time in any of its attacks, not to mention how strong its bite must be, to grind through thick stone as effortlessly as it had before. If Belle's senses were right, it could even be as strong as him through stats alone. Yet, like all the other monsters he's faced so far, Belle could see that this one didn't have much intelligence, if any, hence its simple attack patterns. It didn't know how to fight efficiently, making it anything but his equal. That means he can kill it. The boy firmly clutched his dagger in his right hand, waiting as the wolf quickly ran at him. For the 4th time. The moment the monster was off its feet, Belle moved. Sprint. He moved as a blur, his dagger slashing through the wolf as he passed. A howl of pain erupted from the airborne monster as it was carved through, landing on its side with choked growls. A breath of ease blew from Belle's mouth as he stopped his speed and turned around. His attack ended up slicing both of the wolf's right legs off, leaving it on the ground, unable to get up. It whimpered and whined as it struggled to move, flailing about with no results. "Why do I suddenly feel guilty?" Belle grimaced at the pathetic image before him. With a sigh, he crouched by the wolf, quickly sinking his dagger into its side. The creature instantly stopped all movement the moment he did so. "Alarm. You have defeated the Steel Fang Rykhan." Phew. Thank Hestia that it wasn't Dash. Belle's eyes snapped open as he sensed 2 fast figures moving in his direction, hearing splashing as they got close. He shot up to his feet and glanced further in the channel, finding 2 more orange-named Raykins rushing forward. One ran alongside the footpath Belle was on, while the other followed closely from the shallow water of the channel. Damn it. Knowing he needed the open space, Belle leaped off the side path just as the first Rykhan dived at him, avoiding it while heading for the second in the water. He raised his dagger above his head in both hands just as he reached the second wolf, who hadn't expected the human to leap directly at him. Higher. Belle swung his dagger down and plunged it directly into the top of the running wolf's head, effectively slamming the creature into the water with a large splash. He didn't waste any time, yanking his weapon back out and turning around just in time for the second wolf, who had already reached him in that short moment, to thrust its jaw for his face. GRK. Belle knew his dagger wouldn't defend him from the large bite coming for him, so on instinct, his hands partially grabbed at the sides of the Rykhan's head, and he planted his right foot between its front legs while letting himself roll backward into the water, using the monster's own momentum against it to throw it overhead behind him. Splashing echoed in the tunnels as Belle's head emerged from the water with a gasp for air, his body completely soaked. And yet, the cold and wetness were the last thing on his mind as he scrambled back to his feet and turned around with his dagger ready again. The steel-fang Raikan flailed its body as it landed on its back but didn't take long to climb back to its feet with a snarl and barking jaws. Belle glared at the wolf but didn't initiate an attack, waiting until he saw the monster run for him again. Sprint. Just as he had done for the first wolf, Belle sped by and slashed through the monster with his dagger, ending behind it with its head flying clean off. Hearing the splash of the monster's collapsing body, Belle released another breath of relief, finally done with the immediate danger. However, he didn't relax, nor did he feel even close to happy about how he had taken care of the monsters. That was sloppy. Too sloppy. That was the first time Belle had faced monsters that gave him trouble since gaining the system, but he hadn't handled them as effectively as he had wanted. Not to mention, he had let himself get distracted near the start over the improved state of his body. He couldn't be stupid, not when the stakes involved his death. Sorry, Miss Aina. Despite what I said, I already got a little careless. His sweat dropped, knowing that if his advisor somehow ever learned of this moment, she'd rant his ear off. Resolving to never make that mistake again, Belle approached the closest Raikan's body and crouched by it, the monster's weight in the shallow water keeping it in place. Even though they were created by the system, these are still monsters, so they should drop magic stones too, right? Belle cut open the wolf where he knew the magic stone should be for all monsters, around their affiliated chest area. However, he was shocked to find nothing. What? He stood up with engrossed eyes, the implications of this bringing confusing thoughts. Are they something completely different from normal monsters? Then, Belle didn't like that thought, not at all. It had already been bad enough that the system could create entire dungeons with monsters, but those monsters won't even be the same as those in Arario's dungeon. That means whatever he studies about monsters with Miss Aina won't help him with anything the system makes. Just another reason to take this as seriously as possible. He mumbled gravely. While brooding at his revelation, Belle saw some sparkling coming from his left. Turning his head, he noticed that the decapitated head of a Raikan had landed on the edge of the footpath, with a faint light coming from its mouth. Curious, Belle trudged through the water and looked into the open maw, finding the source of the sparkle coming from the monster's non-metallic fangs. What? Belle reached forward and grabbed the fang, finding it effortless to pull out. Item, Raikan's fang. Item class, none. Type, junk. A large and sharp fang of a Raikan. You may keep this item in your inventory or sell it in the store. A drop item. Belle gasped. Drop items were rare for monsters to leave behind, and he didn't think there would be any from these ones. Except, wait, junk. His excitement died as he saw a lack of item class ranking the object and its type. His face scrunched up. So it's not worth anything, then. He turned his head at the other corpses nearby and saw the same sparkle coming from both of their mouths. Their bodies aren't disappearing, and they both have drop items, too, so it might not even be rare. Is the only purpose of these drops to sell to the store? With that thought in mind, Belle looked down at the fang in his hand. Store. The simple screen of 2 words popped up. Sell. Yes. Would you like to sell, item, steel Raikan fang? Quantity, 1. The fang vanished, and Belle heard the jingle of coins as his gold went up in the corner of the screen. 20 gold. I think even one of the goblin stones had been worth more. So they really are worthless. I guess it only makes sense with this being an E-rank dungeon. He concluded. Growling. Gra dash. Belle didn't even flinch at the accumulating mass of growling behind him. He just turned to the darkness with narrowing eyes. He saw rows and rows of glowing red eyes in return. Is this like a monster party? Belle noted just over a dozen of these monsters as they entered his visibility, all no different from each other and equally dangerous. It should have left him cowering, facing so many more when fighting 3 had felt like walking a tightrope. And yet, Belle bent his knees and held his dagger defensively in front of him. I'm actually feeling excited to get stronger. He smiled. This time, he was the one to dash forward first. There's someone I need to catch up to. Lefia stood in her magic circle with burning determination, clothes partly torn in blood, leaking from her mouth. This was her moment, her time to save her teammates rather than be protected as she's always been. In front of her were AIS, Tyon, and Tiona, all distracting the large, plant-like monsters that had erupted around them when the group had been looking for that human boy, forcing them into the battle that was now. After taking an initially horrible blow, the elf was back up, ready to finish this battle and help her friends. And she wouldn't be fighting as a burden, never again. Harbinger of the end, the white snow. Blow with the wind before the twilight. Closing. Light, the freezing land. Blizzard, the 3 severe winters. My name is Alf. Her 3 teammates landed in front of her, ready to move again at any moment. Win Fimbul Vita. Finishing her chant, Lefia pointed forward and fired Reveria's powerful ice magic. Friends simultaneously leaped upward at the same time the plant monsters rushed forward, all 3 creatures becoming completely engulfed in what was akin to a concentrated blizzard at point-blank range. Icy mist obscured the area for a few seconds until it cleared up, revealing the 3 frozen forms of the monsters they had been fighting. High up, leaping through the air, both Amazons and AIS flew at the icy statues of monsters and shattered all 3 with a blow each before landing simultaneously. Woohoo! Tiona cheered with upward arms as she ran to the group's mage and tackled her into a hug. Thanks, Lefia. You really saved us there. Tiona. Lefia uttered, caught off guard by the embrace. Tyon and AIS walked over to them. I'll say, that was some impressive magic. The former praised with a smile. You were just like Reveria, AIS added with a small smile. Lefia's eyes lit up like the stars, even becoming a bit teary. AIS-sama. Good job, everyone. Their goddess walked over to them with a smile on her face and hands on her hips. Loki, you are still here? Tiona asked in surprise. Oi, what's that supposed to mean? Of course I'm gonna watch my kiddos kick ass. The goddess snapped, her walking turning to angry, stomping the rest of her approach. Sorry. Tiona chuckled. Goddess Loki. The group turned their heads and found several adventurers wearing elephant masks of the Ganesha familiar running over to them, with Aina following them from behind in evident panic. We got reports of monsters appearing. The half-elf stated as the adventurers scoured the area. My kiddos took care of them already. Loki beamed. Oh, thank goodness. Aina slumped, relief evident in her posture. By the way, how did these monsters get loose anyway? Wasn't the Ganesha familiar holding them? Tiona asked. Aina shook her head. No, the Ganesha familiar has all their monsters for the festival accounted for. It's one of the first things they checked when they heard of the sightings here. Seriously? So these were just here for some reason? Tiona asked in shock. And they were of a species we've never seen before too. Tyon added in thought. They were a new species. Aina asked in surprise. We'll give the details later. Loki cut in with a casual wave. For now, let everyone know. That all's good. Aina gave them a nod before turning around and heading back the way she came, the Ganesha familiar adventurers following behind her calmly since there was no danger. After they left, Tiona turned to her friends. So, are we gonna keep looking for that one guy again? The Almirage boy. Reminding the group of what they had been doing before disaster struck, Loki sighed and scratched the back of her head. He's probably long gone by now. Just when I had finally found him too. AIS looked down in evident disappointment. She had really thought she'd finally be able to apologize to him. It can't be helped. Let's look around for a bit, but then we'll head back. I had enough of monsters for a day. Loki grumbled. Also, we need to go get Lefia healed up. The elf had almost forgotten that she had been bleeding to her side, although it was mostly healed thanks to a potion she had taken before her final attack. Don't worry, Lefia. We'll get you healed in a jiffy. Tiona cheered, taking her friend by the hand and pulling her away. Tiona. Her friend uttered in surprise. Tiona, don't handle her like that. Tyon admonished her sister as she marched forward after them. That left AIS and Loki following a few steps away. A lot of weird things have been happening lately. AIS turned her head at her goddess's serious voice, finding her sharp eyes partly open into a frown. First, that new species you all found on the 50th floor, then what happened to Hestia's brat on the 5th floor, and now this? This is all rubbing me the wrong way. It was odd to AIS, too, as it would be for anyone else who's lived in Ororio for a while. She couldn't help but wonder what was going on, but she knew that Loki and the executives would be the ones to figure it out rather than herself. Not to mention, we lost Itty Bitty's kid. The one time we find him without even looking and he gets away. Loki whined. That had AIS looking down in sad disappointment. The innocent boy from the dungeon had still been stuck in her mind for the last few days, where she had been initially worried before. Due to the Minotaur encounter, she had been horrified to learn of his dreadful experience in the dungeon because of her familiar's mistake. It gnawed the sword princess from the inside to the point where she had started using the free time she usually reserved for the dungeon to instead go out and look for the boy, never successful each time. And now, so soon after finally catching sight of him, he got away again. She could only hope she found him again soon, then she'd finally get her chance to apologize. Especially with what Reveria had suggested for doing so. Well, at least Mama won't be on my ass this time. AIS blinked and turned back to her goddess, whose gaze became a mischievous grin. After all, Lephia scared him away, didn't she? She ain't gonna like that. The sword princess internally gave the elf her condolences. Keep moving. A Riken's head went flying. Don't stop. Another was sent crashing into two more. Don't get hit. A burst of blood polluted the wall. If you can't dodge dash. The tearing of clothing echoed. Then mitigate the amount of damage done. A howl of pain was cut short. Just like the chamber. The air whistled as a blade swung through. If you stop, you'll get slaughtered. 3 more slashes sliced through flesh easily. Don't stop until they are all dead. Bell flew through the air before landing right on top of the last Raikan, plunging his dagger into the top of its neck with so much force that even half of the handle sank in with it. Gra dash. The wolf's cry was cut off by choking on its own blood, to which it fell limp into the water. That left Bell's breathing and the flowing water as the only sounds left in the area. And what an area it had become. The bodies of countless Rakens lay in the water or along the footpaths on the sides. The final Raikan Bell was crouching on acted almost like a line splitting 2 zones, with the entire area in front of him free of red, while everything in the path behind him flowed with blood-stained water and severed Rakens scattered about. As for Bell himself, he was on his knees on top of the last Riken's corpse, soaked to the brim, and head hanging with heavy breathing as his hair dripped with water. His hands were tightly wrapped around his dagger, and parts of his brown jacket and pants were torn, with even a few small but visible cuts that thankfully weren't excessively bleeding. There wasn't too much blood visible on him, partly thanks to having to dive and splash around in the water a lot while fighting the wolves, but his finishing blow had splattered a patch of red onto his cheek, one he hardly noticed. I did it. He panted. *ring*. The adventurer almost didn't hear the system's notification with how tired he felt, but his head lazily lifted with hazy eyes at the message that appeared. Alarm. You have earned title, Wolf Slayer. Heh. A title. Bell blinked a few times to regain his bearings just as another screen appeared. Title, Wolf Slayer. A title given to a hunter proficient in slaying wolves. All stats increased by 40% against beast-type monsters. You may only have one title equipped at a time. What is this? Is this another skill? A buff against beast-type monsters. He gasped. Status. Name, Bell Cranel. Level 1. Job, none. Title, Wolf Slayer. HP, 766. MP, 81. Underscore 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 underscore. Our STR G221-G263. Ovit G201-G248. Our DEX G232-G271. OAGI D562-D591. Mag, H140. Ausen G200-G238. Remaining points, 0. Underscore 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 underscore. Skills. Longevity. All diseases, poisons, curses, and status effects are healed. Sleeping will. Explosively increase regeneration ability. Sprint mana cost 5, plus 1 a minute. Activates to increase your movement speed by 30%. Costs 1 mana per minute to maintain. Your running has strengthened your legs. Unyielding Spirit when below 30% HP. All damage received is reduced by 50%. You have an unyielding spirit. Magic. Development abilities. Wow. He wasn't surprised that he had gained a significant jump in stats again, but this much when it didn't even feel like he'd gotten halfway through this dungeon. But more importantly, something else changed. Name, Bel Cranel. Level 1. Job, none. Title, Wolf Slayer. HP, 766. MP, 81. He completely forgot that there was a title section in his status. And that effect. Title, Wolf Slayer. A title given to a hunter proficient in slaying wolves. All stats increased by 40% against beast-type monsters. Amazing. So it is like another skill. Only, it might be something I can change. He looked at the notification that had shown up with it. You may only have one title equipped at a time. It seemed to be the case. So he could change titles based on the situations he's in. The system really does have so many intricate functions. And speaking of functions, now I can start picking up item drops. He smiled, glancing at several sparkling items among all the corpses. By the end of his looting, Bel had picked up at least 3 dozen fangs, 2 rusty daggers, a cloak called Adventurer's Clothes, and a return stone. He eyed the item curiously. This was the stone that the system said would be needed if he wished to exit the dungeon. More specifically, it was only for this specific dungeon and would disappear at the end if not used. Bel finally had a way to escape the dungeon, yet he didn't even think about using it. He looked further into the sewer with a melancholy, reminiscent gaze. If it was the me from before, I would have run away without hesitation. More specifically, if he hadn't ended up in that chamber, he would still be the naive boy with such large dreams yet no idea what he was getting into, nor the resolve to face it all the way. But now he has that resolve. Now he has that fire for his goals, to get stronger and never feel as pathetic as he had in that chamber, to be a hero and have the strength to be the best one. And to also have a harem of girls to love. But that's until later, after all the hero stuff. Otherwise, he probably won't even have a chance of having one in the first place. Bel put the stone into his inventory and marched on. He followed the main water channel further, ignoring the occasional openings in the walls on the footpaths. He had no doubt the system wanted him to keep going on the central path. It made the most sense. Along the way, he discovered 2 more types of monsters he doubted were in Arario's dungeon, monka-like monsters called Razor Claw Brigas that had tried to ambush him from openings in the ceiling, and panther-like beasts called Black Shadow Raisins that had tried to also ambush him from openings in the walls. Slaying them was practically effortless for Bel, thanks to his new title, but their item drops were claws of junk he sold to the system. He didn't find another Steel Fang Raikan for nearly an hour. The lack of the wolves had Bel completely alert. He hasn't actually seen how the system spawns its monsters, as the Raikans had been appearing from the darkness while the others came from openings already in the tunnel, but he doubts that it had suddenly stopped spawning a type of monster because he's learned how to kill them. There's something going on. Soon, Bel found himself at a dead end, but not a natural one. Rather, the central tunnel in front of him was completely blocked off by rubble, having entirely collapsed on itself at some point. The entire path was covered by stones, with both water and weeds leaking between the openings. If I can't keep going, then the only path left is. He craned his head upward at the footpath to his right, finding a large, obvious iron double door under an arch of stone against the wall. Bel wasted no time climbing onto the footpath and standing before it. When he couldn't sense anything on the other side, he grabbed the handle and forcefully pulled it open. Inside was yet another system, evidently much older than the one he had just gone through. The surfaces were made of brick riddled with weeds and vines, while the wall-mounted magic stone lamps lined up flickered. Bel cautiously stepped down the steps in front of him as he found the entire floor flooded. More water. The boy sighed but kept going, stepping into the shin-deep wetness and walking ahead to an open path he could see across the room, only for him to freeze in place. He saw a sea of darkness full of 4 times more crimson eyes than the previous wave he had faced. They all bore at him as snarls and growls filled the air, the leading wolf stalking forward in what almost seemed to be confidence. This was evidently where all the Rakins had piled up, waiting for him. And yet, Bel's main focus was on the color of the name on the leading Rykon. White, not orange. In fact, all the Rakins behind it were the same. It's just like all the names of the monsters I've faced so far in Arario's dungeon. But why? What changed? The only thing I could think of that's the same between all the white named monsters is Dash. His pupils dilated. They weren't hard to kill. He whispered in realization. It hit Bel like a punch from a minotaur. The names show how strong an opponent is, compared to himself. Red means it's clearly stronger than him, just like the giant centipedes in the desert. Orange most likely means a monster is as strong as him, like these Rakins. And, finally, white must mean a monster is weaker than him, just like the monsters he's been facing on the upper floors. And as of now, he has the Wolf Slayer title. So if the Rakins' names are white now, they'll be easy to kill. A change transpired in the atmosphere, with the Rakins suddenly hesitating to approach the boy. Bel reached into his inventory and pulled out one of the 2 rusty daggers he'd acquired, brandishing both his weapons with a frankly unsettling grin, one made more intimidating with his excited, glowing red eyes and blood splattered on his face. Thank you for the meal. He sprinted towards them. Alarm. You have defeated the Steel Fang Rykon. Alarm. You have defeated the Steel Fang Rykon. Alarm. You have defeated the Steel Fang Rykon. The same message appeared over and over again from each Rykon Bel killed. His daggers cut through the monsters like butter as he zigzagged from one to another, moving like a bolt of lightning so fast that each wolf didn't know it was dead until their heads were already severed clean off. With one simple instance of sprint and the 40% increase in his stats, the battle had become a slaughter. His newly acquired rusty dagger shattered after not even killing 1/4 of the Rykins. But he hadn't expected much from it anyway. Bel hadn't even let it faze him as he practically flew through the saw as a wheel, carving through Rakins like they weren't even there. It hadn't even been 10 minutes before they all lay lifeless in the water around him. Phew, I might have gotten a little too into that. Bel gently breathed in and out with various feelings of satisfaction. That may have been the fastest he's ever moved, and he's still only level 1. His eyes shimmered as he smiled, proud of himself. However, that smile dampened when he saw the state of his guild dagger, duller with a few chips in its blade. Oh no. He felt the edge with his finger and cringed. This was his primary weapon, and he had no others besides the second rusted dagger in his inventory. Killing with so much force in a short time must have taken a lot out of it, and frankly, Bel should be surprised that a simple guild dagger had lasted so long without wearing down earlier. But this was still bad. Sure, Bel could probably still complete this dungeon with the dagger. But he isn't getting any magic stones here, meaning he won't have Valis for his efforts to save up for another weapon. The best he could do was sell some of the junk items he picked up. But if these monsters really weren't from Arario's dungeon, then that'd bring all sorts of questions. Bel sighed and scratched the back of his head. He'll figure this out once out of the dungeon. No point in worrying about it now. Status. Our STR, G263-G266. Our VIT, G248-G251. Our DEX, G271-G275. Our AGI, D591-D595. Our MAG, H140. Our SEN, G238-G240. Remaining points, 0. Hardly any stats despite having killed so many more Rakins. While a disappointment, it made sense to Bel because of how he had effortlessly killed the monsters because of Wolf Slayer. Benefits of power, but at the cost of growth. He'll have to keep this in mind. He doesn't always want to choose the easier way, but he also shouldn't make things needlessly difficult for himself. Bel continued his trek after looting what he could from over 3 dozen Rakins. He's been in this dungeon for a few hours now, just like he would typically spend in Arario's dungeon, so it didn't really concern him too much time-wise. What did concern him, though, was the growing pressure he felt as he went deeper into the ancient labyrinth-like sewers, not to mention the slightly denser mist covering the floor as he moved forward. A lack of monsters also became evident as Bel went through the twists and turns of the dungeon, finding every kind of doorway along the way blocked off by rubble. clearly coercing him on a specific path. Something big was coming up. Bell trudged through the flooded ground of another tunnel as he heard the sound of rushing, water echoing farther ahead of him. The current was also gently pushing him back, letting him know that he was indeed walking to the direct source of the flooding. Despite the growing pressure making the hairs on his neck stand up, Bell kept following the straight path until he ended up at a T-shaped intersection, but with both the left and right routes entirely blocked off by debris similar to the others behind him. However, there was still one way to go. A hole in the very center of the stone wall ahead of him. It had a roughly circular shape, with water pouring out from the lower edge to fill the old sewer, and unlike the faintly lit path of lamps lighting the way here, there was only pure darkness inside the opening. Wisps of mist leaked out of the hole, and Bell could feel his senses warning him of the imposing pressure coming from inside. Whatever is in the hole is strong. Bell stopped right before the opening of pouring water, lips pursed in uneasiness. That's where the boss is, isn't it? His sense stat told him precisely of the danger beyond, of the strength of a powerful opponent. Taking a deep breath, Bell turned away from the hole and opened his inventory, pulling out a red potion and chugging it down. A gentle green glow covered his body as his minor wounds healed, leaving him in the best shape he could be, excluding his faint fatigue. Phew! He wiped his mouth as he examined his inventory. Another 2 basic potions, the second rusty dagger, several fangs and claws, and the return stone. It feels like I can't do anything else to prepare. He'd be fighting this boss, no matter what. He's come too far to stop now. Thankfully, since the monsters in the dungeon hadn't been too devastating to fight, Bell really hadn't needed to use any health potions besides the one he had just used to prepare himself. So now he has his remaining 2 potions for what he knew would be a hard battle. They couldn't heal anything too extreme or fix blood loss, but it was better than nothing. With that, Bell pulled out the other rusty dagger from his inventory before turning back to the large hole, expression determined but with cold sweat dripping down his head, which could actually just be some sore water. Still, he kept a hardened gaze as he trudged through the rushing ankle-deep water, not letting a single doubt plague his mind. He found himself going through many other holes in a straight path through several tunnels, all flooding with water as well. Despite the lack of magic stone lamps, Bell was surprised to find that he could see decently well in this darkness. Not too far, but enough that he wasn't entirely walking blind. The holes eventually took him to a staircase leading up to another room. Finally free of the water, Bell went up the steps and through the doorless entrance. He entered a large, rectangular chamber with rows of space-out columns, each several meters high, and more barely shining magic stone lamps on the ceiling. What in Hestia's name is this? The white-haired boy could only walk forward in stunned silence as he saw a large body of black water covering the entire end of the room. Moss, native plants, roots, and even a few vines littered the moist area. It was almost as if the room had been turned into a swamp. All was silent. And then it wasn't. A splash to the right made Bell's instinct scream as he turned and raised his weapons just as a dark blue blur whipped at him. Fast dash. While he successfully met the attack with his daggers, the force behind the strike still sent him flying, crashing through one of the columns in the room. Ooh! He tumbled until his back hit the wall, bouncing off and leaving him curled on the ground. NGH. Bell weakly lifted his head, ignoring the blood leaking down the side of it, an expression of horrid disbelief formed with bulging eyes. This is a boss. Reptilian glowing orange eyes pierced Bell from afar, belonging to a giant cobra monster of dark blue scales and a slithering black tongue. Swamp's ruler, blue poison-fanged Rasaka. Its name is Orange. The snake coiled around itself, keeping its eyes on Bell before opening its giant maw of sharp fangs and teeth. Hiss! Its hiss might as well have been a roar by how it shook the whole room, even causing ripples in the surrounding water. Bell immediately shot up to his feet, feeling the incredible pressure from the monster. That's a bad sign. He nervously brandished his daggers in front of him, only to see one blade instead of 2. Blinking, Bell discovered that the rusted dagger in his left hand had broken apart from the snake's initial attack. Ah, that's a really bad sign. The giant cobra uncurled and lifted its head up high, its body becoming a dark silhouette with glowing eyes as it towered over the human in preparation for a strike. For a moment, Bell froze. He saw himself back in the chamber, standing before the Lord as its giant figure bore down at him with its blazing orange eyes and sick grin. The feeling of pure terror returned to the boy, leaving his body shaking as the cobra opened its giant mouth to strike. "What are you doing? Move." Hiss. Move. The cobra launched forward, and life-preserving instincts were all that had kept Bell from being devoured whole. He activated sprint and dashed to the side, running away as the giant monster's mouth flew where he had just been. "Damn it, I thought I was done being scared," he thought as he ran, looking back to see the snake turning its body and quickly slithering after him. He was shocked to see it keeping up, despite using his speed skill so fast. Bell swerved in place just as the snake's maw neared him, letting its large body pass to the side while still being in range. Taking the opportunity, he slashed at the monster's body and let its own movement slide against his dagger, only to be met with sparks rather than blood. He hissed in frustration. "Its scales are too thick. I can't cut it." Giving up his initial attack, Bell went around a pillar just as the giant snake circled back, hissing before taking another pounce at him. The monster crashed through the pillar but missed the boy yet again, who took another opportunity to slash at its body, only to be met with the same results as before. How am I supposed to even cut through these with a standard guild dagger? Using sprint, Bell ran circles around the giant snake, continuously slashing at its body as it lunged at him. However, it was evident that no matter how much he slashed at the monster, he wasn't doing any damage whatsoever. Should I have invested more stats into strength? Or is his guild dagger just that bad? Bell heard a whoosh to his left, and dread pooled his gut. Its tail dash. He was slammed straight in his side. Guh. Bell was sent flying into the wall once more, sprawling out like a star on the surface, while knocking his dagger out of his hand. Blood spewed from his mouth on impact before he fell to the floor in agony. And no. He weakly raised his head and saw the snake circling back behind him, flicking its tongue in his direction. Bell ground his teeth together. Am I really going to keep being weak? After I got the resolve to get stronger, am I not even going to be able to go through an E-rank dungeon? He thought about his goddess, whom he had promised to always return to. He thought about Miss Aina, who he had done the same for. He thought about all the heroes his precious grandfather had told him about his entire life, whom he had promised to become a hero of his own. He was not going to be a liar. I'm gonna get hiss stronger. Bell jumped forward from the ground and used sprint to avoid the giant cobra biting into the ground, the force of its impact sending stones flying about. He made a beeline for his dagger and snatched it off the ground as he passed before speedily running around the area again. He panted as he swiped a potion from his inventory and downed it, nearly choking on it as he ran. Immediately, a gentle glow took to his body as he gasped in relief, tossing the bottle to the side. Think, Bell, think. If this monster was out of my league, then its name should have at least been Red. He used the snake's giant size against it, slipping around its vision and constantly slashing at it from different while keeping it continually guessing where he was, although that meant being mindful of its angrily slithering body flailing around. But it's not. It's orange like the wolves. That means it should be hard, but not overwhelming. He slashed in vain at the long body before ducking under a swinging tail. That means there should be an efficient way to kill it. It was optimistic thinking, but to Bell, it made sense. He nimbly jumped to a pillar and leaped off it right as the cobra's head crashed into it. But how? His dagger couldn't cut through the snake's scales, and one solid bite from the giant monster would kill him. There had to be a weak spot. Bell slid to a stop at the end of the room behind the snake, who searched for him on the opposite side before sharply turning around with an open-mouth hiss. Amber spheres met ruby orbs, bringing a tense pressure of killing intent. But it also brought about a realization. That's right. Bell's eyes widened. Its scales are tough, but its organs aren't, eyes included. While it was obvious to many that most living beings have some of the same vulnerable areas, such as the eyes, most adventurers wouldn't even think about getting so close to a giant monster to attack an area so high up. One of the biggest issues was ever getting the chance to get close enough to strike in the first place. But Bell knew how to get close. After all, the monster kept giving him the chance. Brandishing his dagger, he glared at the cobra. Compared to the fear I felt back then, compared to that thing dash. The Lord's grin flashed by. You're nothing. His defiant cry riled up the cobra, which opened its mouth with another room-shaking hiss. It didn't waste any time lowering its head to the ground and slithering quickly towards him. Sprint! Bell returned the advance with his own, dashing towards the giant snake with a battle cry, both nearing the center of the large room. But at the very last second, Bell leaped just as the snake opened its mouth. What resulted was the human vaulting over the mouth and latching onto the hood of the cobra just on top of its head. Don't let go. Bell's hair flew back as he was dragged around, his free hand firmly gripping an indent in the giant creature's scales while his other limb tightly held his dagger as he lay on the speeding cobra. Don't let your chance slip. Quickly crawling over its left eye, Bell raised his dagger. At that moment, the last thing reflected in the snake's iris was a black silhouette of glowing red eyes. Bell screamed as he plunged his dagger into the orb as deep as he could, splashing his entire front with blood and bringing an ear-piercing screech of pain from the cobra. Hiss! Hiss! The giant monster flailed all over the swamp as its hissing cries of anguish echoed eerily. It swung its head to throw the human off, then tried smashing it through stone pillars and even rammed itself into the room's surfaces in a desperate attempt to crush him. NGH. Bell felt the back of his head slam against a wall, but he didn't dare let go. Blood trailed down his forehead as his crimson eyes glowed in determined fury. Please dash. He was smashed through 3 more pillars. Just dash. The snake slammed its head onto the floor before lunging upward to slam into the ceiling. Die already, I. With one final scream, Bell shoved the rest of his dagger all the way into the monster's head. With a sickening squelch, blood engulfing him as he pierced through nerves and stabbed all the way into its brain. The giant snake's hissing abruptly stopped, as did its body, freezing almost motionlessly in the air with its head upward and mouth open. Then, like a puppet with cut strings, it slowly swayed to the right as it fell limp, its massive body crashing to the ground with water and stone bouncing upward from the impact. Huff puff asterisk. Laying right on the monster's head with his arm still deep in its eye, Bell panted hard as he caught his breath, groggily chuckling with blurry thoughts. Look, Hestia. I'm getting stronger. He tiredly smiled. Alarm. You have slain a swamp's ruler, blue poison-fanged Rasaka. Here you go, sir. Enjoy. Handing off the last potato treat for the day, Hestia waited until the customer turned around, before hunching over with a tired sigh and taking off her apron. Today has been hectic with the increased number of people traveling the streets because of the monster feria, but with the day reaching late afternoon, it was finally time to close up shop. It had been hard for Hestia to focus on working, knowing that Bell was exploring some unknown dungeon alone. Not to mention, it was a dungeon created by an external force they still had no understanding of whatsoever. She just wanted to clean up, run back home, and hold him in her arms as soon as possible. Hey, did you hear? Some monsters ended up on Main East Street. Hestia froze. Oh, I heard about that. Some of the Ganesh's familiar's monsters got loose, right? She breathed a sigh of relief. What? That's not what I heard. Some plant monsters suddenly showed up in one of the plazas near Daedalus Street. The Ganesha familiar didn't seem to have anything to do with it. That relief turned to horror. Oh no. Hestia stepped back from her stand, suddenly finding it harder to breathe. Did monsters end up escaping the dungeon Bell made with the key? That doesn't mean something terrible happened to him, right? Oh gods, she has to go find him. Go. Hestia sharply turned her head and saw her boss, an old lady with some faint signs of brown hair, staring tiredly at her yet with understanding. I can already see what you're thinking, she said, having noticed Hestia listen into the gossip. Go make sure he's all right. We'll clean up here. Thank you. Hestia gave the old woman a big bear hug before turning around and sprinting off for Daedalus Street. After yanking out his arm and tiredly climbing off the dead Rasaka's head, Bell discovered 2 things. 1, his poor dagger had finally lost its life, made evident by how he had pulled out a shattered blade. And 2, he got something even better in return. Item, Rasaka's Fang. Item class, C. Type, dagger. Attack, plus 25. A dagger made from Rasaka's Fang. Able to paralyze due to leftover venom. Grants the bleed effect, paralyze. Attacked foes have a chance to become unable to move. Bleed. Attacked foes lose 1% of their health every second. W weapons can have effects like this. Bell's eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets at what he was reading. His blooded hand held the blade, a dagger sharper and broader than his previous one. Like the description said, it was evidently a fang from the monster he'd just slain, with a black color but silvery white edging, finished with a brown, scale-designed handle. Holy Hestia, it has more than twice the attack power of my guild dagger. And with these effects, this is amazing. He gushed, completely in awe at the item he was holding. And it's only a C-rank weapon, too. Bell then glanced at the reward in his other hand, a brown pouch full of some kind of liquid. Item, Risaka's venom gland. Item class, A. Type, potion. A pouch that contains Risaka's purified venom. Obtained by defeating Risaka. Drinking it will give you hardened skin, but the venom will permanently weaken your strength. Risaka's armored scales, minus 20% physical damage taken. Weakened muscles, minus 35% strength. An A-rank item. That's absolutely A. Actually reading the item's description, Bell's excitement died down to a look of confusion. Venom. A potion of venom? And I'd be permanently losing that much strength for some. Defense. Losing 35% strength compared to gaining 20% physical defense. To Bell, it seemed like he'd be losing more than he'd gain. Maybe I could sell it to someone. No. How would I even start to explain what it did and how I got it? It's his first A-rank item obtained, yet Bell had no idea what to do with it, so he just put it in his inventory. Alarm. The boss has been slain. The dungeon interior will revert to its original state. Hey, its original state. The young adventurer gasped as blue lights formed and spread throughout the area. He watched as everything surrounding him turned blue and pixel-like before being engulfed in white light, turning the area into the same place. Wait. No. Looking around, all the destroyed pillars in his battle against the boss had returned as if nothing had happened in the first place, and it wasn't just that. The boss's corpse vanished, all blood was gone, and any signs of there having been a swamp had disappeared entirely, leaving only a large room with a pool of water coming from the entrance where he had come from. Was I not in the sewers? Was I actually in an entirely different world created by the system? That was how Bell interpreted it, being in an entire area based on an existing one, only to end up in the middle of the original one once his job was done. That'd mean he wouldn't have to worry about monsters from these dungeons ever escaping to the public, since they'll always disappear once he kills the boss. Not only that, but any signs of anything having happened, such as the bodies of the monsters he's slain, should also disappear as well. Bell smiled in relief, knowing that Hestia would feel the same reassurance he was. Grrrr. Hey! Hearing growling behind him, being joined by the sounds of crumbling and slithering, Bell sharply turned around while brandishing his new weapon, wondering if this was another test from the system so soon, only for his eyes to widen in a mixture of shock and fear. EA! From the darkness ahead, the level 1 adventurer bore witness to 3 separate yellowish, greenish bodies resembling giant vines slithering around the ground and pillars near him, each holding heads resembling flower buds. Backing up, Bell watched as these snake-like creatures wriggled towards him, only for all 3 to raise their heads and bloom. Their bud-like heads opened to reveal giant maws of carnivorous plants but with human-like teeth. Viola. Grow. All 3 plant-like monsters roared at him, but what brought the overwhelming sense of icy dread in Bell's blood was what he saw appeared on top of each monster. Dark red names. Nope. Getting a flashback to the giant centipedes, Bell activated sprint and ran. He scrambled back to the room entrance, screeching in fear as all 3 heads of the monsters chased after him. He ran through the several large gaps in the walls where he had entered, feet splashing in the water as he made it out of the first opening and back into the older saw system. He landed back in the shin-deep water and kept running, arms rapidly swinging comedically, as he focused all his might on getting the hell out of there. There's no way. There's no way. He didn't dare look back, not even when the sound of roaring died down to a mere echo. He kept sprinting until he reached the double metal doors leading back to Arario's primary saw system, bursting through them before slamming them shut, holding his hands against them tensely. After listening for a few seconds and not hearing anything, he let out a breath of solace and let his head fall against the door. That was scary. I didn't expect to see any more red-named monsters for a while. He thought back to what he had just seen, those vilers snapping their teeth as they attempted to devour them. Bell grimaced. I wasn't supposed to kill them, was I? He would have received a quest otherwise, right? And even without those red names, his sense stat was enough to tell him those monsters were way too strong for him. They had to be at least level 3. This doesn't make sense. Bell groaned, turning his body to lean the back of his head against the door. Didn't the system say that it changed everything back to dash? His words abruptly stopped to a frozen look of realization, recalling the exact message given to him. The dungeon interior will revert to its original state. Its original state. Does that mean that those monsters were already in here before the system even made the dungeon? He whispered in horror. If the system didn't create them, then why are those plant monsters here in the first place? Such strong ones, too. This wasn't good, not at all. He didn't know if he was overthinking this or not, but either way, these monsters being in the sewers spelled bad news for Aurelio. I have to tell Hestia, Bell mouthed, pushing himself off the door and sprinting back through the sewers. He only glanced briefly at how bright and clean the sewers were compared to the version the system had created for him, with crystal clear water and no corpses of monsters littering the area. Not only that, but all the other paths that had been blocked by the system earlier were also cleared for entry. However, Bell didn't know the layout of the sewers enough to find the closest exit himself, so he ran all the way back through the entire complex and to the original entry he had come from. After only a few minutes of straight running, Bell finally returned to the outside world. Exiting from the metal door he had first entered, he stepped outside with a breath of relief, only to pause and glance at the darkened sky of clouds. It's nighttime already? Had I really been in there for that long? He shivered as he felt the night air blow a chilly cold against him, being reminded that he was still soaked to the brim from fighting in the water for so long. At least he had washed all the blood off him. He doubts anyone would believe he had been in the dungeon this far out. All in all, today was still outstanding for him in terms of progress. He lost his guild dagger, but he got a much better one while getting so much stronger. Oh, speaking of which. Status. Our STR, G266-E441. Our VIT, G251-F392. Our DEX, G275-E450. Our AGI, D595-B701. Our MAG, H140. Our SEN, G240-F364. Remaining points, 0. Bell gasped at the numbers in front of him. His agility stat reached B rank already. And he got over 600 stat points from fighting the boss alone, even ignoring the sense stat. This one dungeon had given him a larger jump of stats in one dive than a few days' worth, going into Aurelio's dungeon. But then again, that was probably because all the monsters his faced so far in Aurelio's dungeon haven't been that strong to him because of his fast growth. He has to go lower. He's definitely giving Aina gray hairs. Sighing to himself at the intense studying he'd have to do to be allowed down, Bell started jogging through the street. He went back through the narrow alleyway and peeked out of it, finding many people walking through the road compared to earlier, signaling him that the monster faria must be over by now, or at least nearly done. The albino boy stepped out and tried to blend in casually within the crowd, not realizing that he actually looked the stiffest and most nervous of anyone there, like someone was out to get him. No one saw, right? I won't get in trouble for just being in that area, right? B. Ha! Looking down the street, Bell saw numerous people shout and jump to the side as an oncoming cloud of rampaging dust headed through them all and, more importantly, aiming right for him. What the MMPH? He was shut up as two large, soft mounds landed right in his face, being kept there by arms and legs tightly wrapping around his torso and head. Bell, I'm so glad you're alive. Hestia comedically cried as she held onto her child, even as he swayed back with a muffled voice. Are you okay? You're not hurt, are you? Wait, why? Are you wet? MMPH. Bell reached up and grabbed his goddess from under her armpits, prying her off his face with a gasp of air. He held her outward like a cat as his face burned a flustered red. Hestia, what are you doing here? Dangling from his arms, the short goddess had a quivering lip and adorable watery eyes. I heard about monsters appearing near Daedalus Street and got worried about you. So many things have been happening to you, and I just thought, I didn't want to think about it. But I just had to make sure you were okay. Belle looked at her in surprise. Wait, monsters appeared near here. They did. I thought you were, you know. She hinted, mindful of the passing citizens who gave them weird looks. Realizing that they were in too open of an area to talk about this, Belle frowned. Let's go back home, he declared, getting a frantic nod from the goddess. Feeling a sense of urgency, Belle pulled Hestia close and held her in a bridal carry, earning a shocked cry from the goddess as he proceeded to run out of Daedalus Street and through the alleyways rather than the main road. Hestia squealed with flushed cheeks, staring up at his handsome face with sparkling eyes. I'm sorry, Belle, I know this is serious, but I can't help but feel so happy right now. Weren't you worried to death just a moment ago? Belle just focused on returning to the church without being seen, feeling paranoid after seeing those plant monsters in the sewers. And while he was right to do so, it almost cost him, for not long after he passed through these obscure alleyways, a god and his elf companion entered the same area in the direction he had just left. Chapter notes. Belle gets armor and cooler. Still on that solo leveling grind, baby. And what's this? Not even another month has gone by. Man, I'm on a roll. Won't say too much this time, just that I'm still really enjoying the anime and still have that fire under me. I might try to write the Damachi fic or Kanojaba link fic alongside the next chapter though, but in all honesty, I'll probably get carried away again with this. Enjoy the chapter. See the end of the chapter for more. Notes. Tilda, West Main Street dusk, Tilda. Naya, show tired. Mimar really is a slave driver. Under the nighttime sky of Ororio, the feline waitresses of the hostess of fertility, Anya and Chloe, swayed as they tiredly walked through alleyways while holding paper bags full of produce. While most attractive females would actively avoid walking through such secluded areas that'd leave them vulnerable, neither catgirl was concerned about such a thing. There aren't too many people who are threats to them, after all. The monster feria always makes us so busy, Naya. Anya sighed, holding a large bag in her arms. And SYR took the day off too. Who does she think she is, leaving us to do her work? Chloe huffed, holding an equally large bag. After spending hours dealing with waves of customers because of the festival, business had finally slowed down to hold only the usual adventurers of the night. As such, Mimar MIA had taken the chance to send her 2 employees to purchase more ingredients to refill their basically empty inventory. The 2 walked through a shortcut of alleyways heading to their pub, not looking forward to cleaning up after the busy day they had. This sucks. We haven't even had the time to go looking for white-haired Kuan. Anya grumbled as the 2 reached an intersection of alleyways. Oh yeah, I forgot SYR wants us to look for him, Naya. I would love to pass cleaning the toilets. Both waitresses paused as a set of vibrant white hair briefly entered their vision, passing through the intersecting paths ahead of them before disappearing into one of them. Naya, was that white-haired Kuan? Their exhaustion vanished in an instant. Naya haha. Goodbye restroom duty. Chloe, meow take the bags while I bring white-haired Kuan back. Anya declared with a thumb at herself. Hey, meow mean you're taking the bags, right? Chloe corrected. Both girls turned to each other with blank gazes, and it was at this moment they realized the same thing about SYR's offer. There can only be one. Bags of ingredients dropped to the ground as both level 4s bolted forward in the narrow space, hoping to grab the white-haired boy first. They reached the left path the boy had taken, and slid to a stop at the entrance, finding him nearly at the end of the pathway. Stop Naya right there. Anya pointed dramatically. Naya, cute Tushikuan. Chloe added, eyeing his soaked and dripping behind, not even questioning why it was like that. Who was she to question free eye candy? Huh. At the sudden voices behind him, the white-haired boy sharply turned around in alarm. While Chloe had only caught an initial glance of him on the morning he had first run away from SYR, seeing a clearer image of his youth and innocence made her eyes instantly dilate. With shortening breath. Naya. He's just my type. A little younger, and he'd be perfect. She thought with sparkling eyes, only to blink in confusion as she realized that the boy was actually holding someone in his arms, a short woman wearing an even shorter dress with asterisk boing. Boing, asterisk. Gah. Lightning struck behind Chloe as her now pure white eyes stared at the massive mounds. Belle, who are these girls? Don't tell me you were actually seeing them behind my back all along. The childlike yet developed woman suddenly cried out. However, her child didn't respond, for he turned pale at seeing the girl's uniforms. Whitehead Kuan. Anya cheerfully spoke up with a wave, oblivious to Chloe's shock or the boy's growing horror. I'm gonna need Naya to come with me. Okay. That snapped Chloe out of her astonishment, and she turned to Anya in outrage. Naya. Hey. He's coming with me. Why would he go with meow? I'm the prettier one. Anya snapped at her co-worker. As if. My body and tail are far more slender. I'm a cool beauty, Naya no. HMPH, but my boobs are bigger. Naya. I swear we've had this argument before. We did. Whatever, let's just have Whitehead Kuan decide Naya. Turning their heads again, the waitresses no longer saw anyone ahead of them, only alone. Tumbleweed blowing by with perfect timing. He ran away. Both women shouted. Not wanting to lose their ticket to passing restroom duty, both girls kicked on their level 4 speeds and sped down the alleyway with determined glares, neither willing to slow down and risk the other getting ahead. Only, this worked against both felines, for when both reached the corner and sharply turned, with the most minimal movements, they crashed into one another and were sent tumbling down the path. Naya. And to make matters worse, both rolled into a ball down a sudden slope, gaining speeds with indignant cries until the ground returned to an elevated level where they flew out of the alleyway and onto the main road. Passing people shouted in alarm as the two cats rolled right past them with high acceleration, keeping their speed until they crashed into a stationed cat, sending balls of a particular vegetable flying. The gray-haired man running the cart wailed as he fell to his knees. No. My cabbages. Chloe and Anya groaned within the shattered remains of wood and vegetables. Nairo. Memar MIA is gonna kill them. Belle. Who were those girls? Why did they ask you to go with them? Hestia demanded, primarily out of concern this time rather than jealousy, when she saw how scared her unofficial child was. I don't know. It honestly scared me. Belle admitted, not daring to look back as he carried his goddess through the alleyways, following routes he had memoized over the last few days. Maybe the minotaur skin wasn't enough for them. What? You mean they wanted to rob you again? Belle, we got to tell the guild or something. Wait, why didn't we tell them about the first time you were robbed? Hestia pointed out as they exited the alleyway and entered the road right by their church. I don't know. With everything that's been going on with the system, I just never really thought about it. Look, let's talk about this later. We're home. He used his back to push open one of the church doors before running through the nave and stepping down into the safe sanctuary that is their basement. Phew, we're here. Belle sighed in relief as he finally relaxed, his body slumping as it lost tension. Stepping inside, he gently kicked the door closed behind him before placing his goddess on the ground, much to her disappointment. Hestia, I have so much to tell JWAH. To Hestia's confusion, Belle suddenly turned around and covered his face, even crouching, with red ears. Huh? What's wrong, Belle? She moved in front of the boy, only for him to squeak and turn away again. Why your dress? She blinked in confusion before looking down at herself. Having been pressed against a completely soaked Belle, Hestia's pure white clothing had absorbed quite a bit of water, and with it being moderately thin, it was now completely see-through. And considering that bras didn't appear to be a concept in the world, Belle saw a lot. The short but big goddess yelped and instinctively covered her chest with her arms, cheeks flaring red as her twin tails shot up straight like bunny ears. Belle saw me. She thought in dread. Only, to stop and think about it, to which a giddy smile formed instead. Belle saw me Tilda. Oh, Belle. You know that if you want to see them, all you have to do is ask. She giggled. Hestia. Please don't joke like that. Belle stammered, refusing to turn around or uncover his eyes. Huh. Joke. Hestia responded in outrage, uncovering herself. How dare you disregard my affections like that? Get over here. The goddess dove at Belle from behind, her wet chest landing right on the back of his head as she wrapped her arms and legs around him, firmly pressing herself against him. Eek. Belle's cries of embarrassment went on for several minutes as Hestia kept herself latched on. But soon, the boy managed to pry her off and get them to change out of their wet clothes. Hestia changed into a replica of her white dress that seemed to be the only type of clothing she owned, while Bell only had another pair of pants and was forced to go shirtless from, lacking much other clothing of his own. Not that Hestia was complaining, not one bit. What followed was the two sitting on the bed as Bell told Hestia everything that had transpired in the instant dungeon. The unidentifiable monsters with no magic stones, the title feature he gained, the giant boss snake, and then the violers he had encountered afterward. Hestia was silent throughout his entire account, but she was left pale and dumbfounded by the end. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, placing her palms together in a praying motion. Okay, there are so many things I'm freaking about, Bell, but I've done this enough to know I should probably go in order. So, first off, you fought a giant snake. It actually wasn't that bad. Bell downplayed with a chuckle. It was strong, but it wasn't too hard to fight once I got over how large it was. Its name was only Orange, so I knew I could kill it. That reminds me, I know what the colors of the monsters' names mean. They tell me how strong a monster is compared to me. Good to know, but still, Hestia said, staring up at the boy in concern. That sounds like it was horrifying. I mean, it was a little, but that was because there was a moment the snake reminded me of. The Lord. Bell shamefully looked down, a little angry at himself at the shiver that came just by thinking of the monster. Oh, Bell. Noticing this, Hestia scooted close and hugged him, with Bell returning the embrace with one arm. I'm okay. He smiled sadly and moved on. Fighting the boss was a lot simpler than I had expected, and I got some cool rewards from it. Excitement quelling the momentary somberness, Bell held out his hands with his palms upward and, with a simple thought, both Rasaka's fang and venom gland instantly appeared. Through blue pixels. The inventory function really is convenient. Woohoo! That's so cool. It's a fang as a dagger. Hestia geeked as she eyed the blade, with sparkles in her eyes. Although, I'm not sure about this other one. Bell said, showing the pouch in his palm. It says it's an A-rank item that'll give me a skill to increase my defense, but it's also a venom that'll permanently weaken my strength. An A-rank item that gives you a skill. That's a Mazdash. Wait, did you say it's a venom that'll lower your strength? Hestia cut herself off with a raised eyebrow of suspicion. I had the exact same reaction. Bell giggled, a sound that might as well have been gold, to the goddess's ears. The defense buff is good because it reduces 20% of physical damage I take, but I'd be damaging my muscles and permanently decreasing my strength by 35%, so I'm not sure I want to use it. Hestia's face scrunched up in agreeing hesitation, only for a flash of realization to replace it. Wait, did you say that it's venom? Didn't you get a skill against stuff like that? A moment of silence fell over them. Status. With widened eyes, the boy looked forward and scanned the very first skill he had obtained. Longevity. All diseases, poisons, curses, and status effects are healed. Sleeping will explosively increase regeneration ability. You're right, Hestia, he exclaimed, shooting up from the bed with his dagger disappearing back into his inventory, so he was only holding the pouch. If my skill fixes all status effects, then it should fix anything bad trying to change my body like this venom. Does that mean you're gonna drink it? Hestia asked in horrid concern yet morbid curiosity. Well, the system gave it to me, right? And its item type is potion rather than poison, so it shouldn't actually hurt me besides trying to give me the debuff. Bell reassured her. I guess that makes sense, but I still feel uneasy about you just drinking literal venom. The woman cringed. Now that you're saying that does sound disgusting, Bell admitted with a queasy grimace, only to shake his head. No, I can't hesitate. Bottoms up. He craned his head back and poured the pouch's thick purple contents down his throat while Hestia anxiously watched, wondering if they should have at least gone near the Dien sect. Familiar first in case anything bad happened. Thankfully, Bell didn't drop dead, but the moment he finished the last drop of venom, he pulled the pouch away from his mouth with a gag. Bitter. A harmful substance has been detected in your body. The effects of cure poison will be activated. His disgust turned to intrigue as he saw messages pop up. Hey, cure poison. So longevity uses varying effects depending on what's negatively affecting my body. 321. Cure poison has been completed. Item, Rasaka's venom's effect. Weakened muscles is fading. Item, Risaka's venom's effect. Risaka's armored scales has been added. It worked. He cheered. Really? So now you have another skill without the bad part? Hestia asked in excited relief. I'll check. Status. Skills. Longevity. All diseases, poisons, and status effects are healed, and sleeping exponentially. Increases regeneration ability. Sprint mana cost 5, +1 a minute. Activates to increase your movement speed by 30%. Costs 1 mana per minute to maintain. Your running has strengthened your legs. Unyielding spirit. When below 30% HP, all damage received is reduced by 50%. You have an unyielding spirit. Risaka's armored scales. Physical damage reduced by 20%. It's there. Now all physical damage I take goes down 20%. Bell turned to his goddess with a heartfelt smile. Another skill to help me always come back to you. The goddess's eyes shined as her lip began quivering. B. She threw herself at him with a wide hug, the boy catching her with a light laugh. Hestia praised her child in name for several minutes during their embrace, and she tried, holding on for even longer to keep her face pressed into Bell's naked chest, grinning lewdly at his decently built muscles compared to when he had started off as an adventurer a few weeks ago. But now, it was time for more concerning manners. Hestia. Bell started in a serious tone, sitting across the woman after getting her off him. After I killed the boss, the dungeon completely disappeared with all the monsters created by it, so I'm sure we won't have to worry about any instant dungeons ever spreading them into Rio. Hestia looked evidently relieved but waited for Bell to go on. But, after everything changed back, that's when I saw those plant monsters I mentioned. Hestia froze at the reminder, even paling a bit when she remembered what she had heard at her job. Bell, are you sure they were plant monsters? Like, absolutely sure. The boy blinked in surprise. Yes? Do you know something? She rapidly nodded her head. I heard people talking about something that happened at the Monster Feria today. They said that monsters suddenly appeared on East Main Street near Daedalus. Plant monsters. Bell gasped in horror. Plant monsters too. So it wasn't just in the sewers. Did anyone get hurt? Hestia looked down with crinkling eyebrows. I don't know. I only heard that they suddenly appeared. Then I went looking for you. I was so worried that they were from the instant dungeon and that they somehow got past you. She raised her head back up, staring into his ruby eyes in concern. I feel really uneasy about this, Bell. The same kind of monster in 2 different places on the same day. That isn't natural. The boy looked down with a frown. I think so too. We have to tell someone that they are in the sewers, like the Loki or Ganesha. Familiars. But Bell, you can't just walk over and tell them. There's no way they won't ask what you were doing in the sewers in the first place. That'd make you look suspicious. Bell grimaced. We can't just say nothing. What if the monsters get out of the sewers and start hurting people? Just send them a letter or something. Bell stilled, frown shifting into embarrassed realization. Oh, right. I guess that works. Should I ask Miss Aina to send it? Sure, if you want to leave a trail back to you. Hestia deadpanned. Ah, right. Bell sheepishly chuckled. Okay, I'll find a way to get it to them without being seen. It wouldn't be good if people started pestering Aina because of it. Good. Hestia nodded, only for a smirk to form as she crawled forward and sat up with her hands on his arms. But now we have more important things to talk about. Bell tensed. There's something else. Our date, Bell. Hestia exclaimed with a squeal, shaking his arms. The albino teen blinked, recalling the faint promise he had made the few days before heading into the instant dungeon. Oh right, I forgot about that. What? How could you forget? You promised me. Hestia whined, eyes immediately starting to water in heartbreak. I am sorry. It's because of everything that happened. Bell panicked. It took several minutes for him to calm down his whining goddess, the two concluding that, on her next day off, they'd finally have the outing she'd absolutely kill for. Tilda, hostess of Fertility Late Night, or Tilda. Are you two idiots? Anya and Chloe trembled from their sazes on the ground, the entirety of the hostess of Fertility shaking from their boss's powerful voice. MIA Grand stood before them with arms crossed and fire in her eyes, her hair even floating upward from pure anger alone. The rest of the staff cleaned the closed restaurant around them with unsympathetic looks of disappointment directed at their co-workers, with Ryu particularly miffed as she absent-mindedly dried dishes from the kitchen. Not only did you both literally drop all the ingredients I told you to get, but you even destroyed someone else's business, all from trying to kidnap some boy. Naya. We weren't trying to kidnap him, Chloe abruptly said. Naya. Anya confirmed. We just wanted to dash. Shut up. Both girls shut their traps with shivers at Mia's dark look. From what you told me, all you did was tell him to go with you before fighting over who'll bring him back first. If he remembered your uniforms from the time Ryu threatened him dash. The mentioned elf flinched. Then he probably thought you were there to hunt him off the streets or something. What's the matter with you two? You're lucky that even if he goes yap pin to the guild or the Ganesha familiar, they most likely won't take him at his word. Be glad that we're known for chasing out men rather than chasing after them. That sounds kinda messed up when she puts it like that. Luna's sweat dropped as she wiped a mug. But can't avoid paying for that cabbage stand you idiots somehow crashed into. Everything is coming out of your paychecks. Got it? Mia snarled. The scolded girls shamefully nodded in acknowledgement. And you've both got a week each cleaning the toilets now. Naya. Anya and Chloe snapped their heads up at the dwarf in disbelief. Mia simply returned their shocked expressions with a glare. You both caused this by trying to avoid it, so it's only fitting that's what you get. Now get back to work. Seeing they had no hope of avoiding their fates, both girls hung their heads in defeat, with gloomy auras surrounding them as they stood up and separated to do different tasks. As for Mia, she stomped her way to the back of the pub. Can't believe this all because of some boy. She huffed in frustration as she disappeared into the next room, but not before shouting one last thing. Next time, actually talk to the kid instead of just trying to bring him here without any context. I don't need the Ganesha familiar coming here asking if we're trying to abduct young boys. We could just blame Chloe if that happens. Luna mumbled. Naya. What was that? Nothing. Anya sighed in sorrow as she lay against one of the tables and half-heartedly wiped it, tears in the corners of her eyes as she whined about the unfairness of the world. As she lamented, her suffering, subtly swept the ground in her direction, an innocent smile on her face as she stopped beside her. Are you all right, Anya? Nio. Anya muttered, weakly turning her head to the human with vibrant, watery eyes. I tried to bring him back, I really did, Naya. Yes, I appreciate it. Thanked her while gently patting her back. Did you at least learn anything about him? Naya. Anya stood up and put her index fingers on each side of her head, closing her eyes with her face scrunching up as the rusty gears in her brain turned with screeches. Ryu and Luna deadpanned as they practically saw smoke coming out of the catgirl's head, before her eyes snapped open like receiving a revelation. Naya. She snapped her fingers before standing proud with hands on her hips. The short lady with big boobs he was carrying called him Belle. Syr's smile grew wider. Oh, you did mention that he was carrying a woman. How did she look? Naya. Ow. Once more, Anya closed her eyes and focused as hard as before, making everyone's sweat drop. As more smoke poured out of her head, she jumped as the image hit her. Naya. I remember. She was really short with twin tails and a tiny white dress, but she also had some huge boobs. I mean some serious honkers. A real set of badonkers. Packing some Dubin honkerous dash. We get it, Anya. Luna cut her off with an indignant shout. Naya haha, sorry. The catgirl shrunk back with a laugh. Still drying the dishes, Ryu's neutral eyes gained the slightest hint of hope. Belle. As for Syr, her smile was reaching her ears by now. Thank you, Anya, she said, reaching out and patting the girl's head, bringing joyful purring from the girl. That'll help a lot. With that, she turned around and went back to sweeping the ground, a plan calculating in her mind. She got all the information she needed. Hearing the boy's name would have been enough. But that very specific description of who he was carrying, she already knew where to find him. It'll be Ryu's turn to go shopping in 2 days, so if she plans this out just right. Perfect. Arario's walls dawn or tilde. As if he hadn't conquered a dungeon all on his own yesterday, Bell was back on the walls to finish his daily quest once more, already completing the 10-kilometer run. His breathing was gentle compared to his harsh exhaling from scorching lungs on day one of his new exercise regime. Sweat glistened off his muscled frame as he jogged to a stop right by the stairs, hearing the familiar ping of the system alerting him that he had completed all his exercises. Once more. This is starting to feel easier now. Bell smiled as he felt the cool glow of the status recovery. Clean his fatigue and sweat, stretching his firm arms as he enjoyed the feeling of relief wave over his body. Maybe I can start holding the status recovery now. It'd be incredibly useful in Arario's dungeon, and in any more instant ones the system makes. Speaking of which, still shirtless, Bell accepted the random item box, the item appearing in his hand. He didn't immediately open it, instead opting to stare at it curiously. What if I get another key? It was something Bell couldn't predict, the distribution of keys he'd end up receiving. If he has to guess, the dungeons will only get stronger as he grows, and he can't do anything about them besides completing each one in order to survive. Not only that, but there's no telling when he'll actually get another key, considering he'll be receiving them from the random item boxes, which are, as the name suggests, random. With that in mind, Bell opened the box. Healing potion. Item class, E. Type, potion. A potion that restores a moderate amount of health upon consumption. No key. But then again, he supposed it only makes sense. He isn't that lucky. Or would it be unlucky? Bell shrugged to himself before vanishing the potion into his inventory. He then had Risaka's fang flash into his hand, spinning the blade to get a feel for it. It's too large for my current sheath, he noted, looking down at what had held his previous guild dagger. While his first weapon had been narrow and straight, Risaka's fang was larger, with a unique design, so he couldn't store it in his first weapon's sheath. I guess I'll have to keep it in my inventory. Despite thinking this, Bell didn't see it as a problem. It'll save him money from not needing a sheath and keeping the dagger in his inventory is the easiest way to summon it anytime with a single thought. And if anyone questions it, he could just put it off as a unique skill that only works with his weapon, nothing crazy that would catch a deity's eye. I should still buy another dagger since my first one broke. Even if it won't be that good. Having a second weapon is smarter. Nodding to himself, Bell crouched and picked up his shirt and leather jacket, only to freeze. Why does it feel like someone is watching him again? He turned around, only for the isolated area around him to show no change. There wasn't a single person in sight, yet Bell could still feel something directed at him. It didn't feel as intense as when the system had warned him of being watched the 2 previous times, but it was still nagging at him. Well, the system wasn't warning him that anyone was peering into his being again, so it's probably fine. Besides, who'd even be watching him all the way up here in the first place? Guild Pantheon Morning or Tilda. What? You want to go down to the 7th floor already? Bell cringed at his advisor's loud voice. Miss Aina, please stop yelling. Realizing she had another outburst, Aina became a bit embarrassed, only to look stern as she put a closed sign in front of her booth and beckoned Bell to follow her. The two went into one of the private rooms to talk, and the moment they took seats across each other, Aina went on another one of her tangents about rushing down too early. Bell, I know you said that you'd be growing faster, but really, isn't this too much? You've only spent a few days on the 6th floor, and now you want to go to the 7th. Aren't you overthinking this? I'm not. Bell didn't hesitate to answer confidently, cutting off Aina's lecturing and bringing a look of shock from her. I am. But Bell, the dungeon's difficulty shoots up enough past the 5th floor, but suddenly going to the 7th and onward is practically suicide for a rookie adventurer. The killer ants there are even known as newbie killers. All your stats should at least be G rank if you even want to even think about going there dash. That's fine then. All my stats are at least E rank now. Bell smiled, making the half-elf freeze in place. A. E. Bell nodded. Heh, I got a lot stronger. Aina stared incredulously at Bell in silence, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. Am I really just supposed to take your word? Bell's eyes softened with fondness. I'd never lie to you, Miss Aina. I care about you too much for that. His response brought a hard blush on the woman. Why you can't just say that while smiling and expect me to be okay with letting you go? Bell. That's shameful. Shameful. Miss Aina, my stats really are at least E rank. I wouldn't lie to you about that. Bell insisted. Realizing that the boy hadn't intentionally attempted to charm her into letting him go, Aina felt a heap of embarrassment. But it wasn't hard for her to shove it down and search the young adventurer's eyes for any sign of a lie, only to see the same genuine earnestness he always carried. But even then, why you still have to pass the 7th floor test with full marks before I let you go? She declared, hoping it'd at least slow him down. Belle's eyes lit up. Yes, I'm ready for it. I made sure to study hard. He even studied for it that much. Was this young rookie really that sure he has to go lower so soon? About half an hour later, Aina received her answer. AA perfect score, she uttered, staring at the perfectly answered test in her hands. Belle grinned and mentally thanked the system, for he had no doubt that it's his sense stat, letting him remember things so much easier. Belle. Yes, Miss Aina. You didn't cheat, did you? Why is that your first assumption? You were watching me the whole time. Belle actually looked hurt by the accusation, making his advisor frantically wave her hands. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, Belle. It's just that. Why you usually get some wrong answers on your first tries, but you got a perfect score instead. I studied a lot. The boy pouted. Aina looked down at Belle's work in shame. He worked so hard to show that he's ready for the next floor, yet here she was, doubting his efforts because of her worries. Even now, she's still anxious about letting him go deeper despite proving that he knows everything he needs to know. Belle, could you show me your status? Aina stopped herself before she could even finish her words. She's overstepping enough as it was, forcing Belle to always get perfect scores and holding him back from his desired pace. Asking to see his status would be one of the biggest violations a guild employee could commit. Not to mention, I'd never lie to you, Miss Aina. I care about you too much for that. Belle had so much faith in her. Why isn't she showing that faith back? He's clearly shown to have changed in a few ways. He still acted as sweet and innocent as before, just with a newfound confidence and initiative. He still seemed just as eager to get stronger and go deeper into the dungeon, but it no longer seemed to be out of childish foolishness of treating it like a fun adventure. Rather, it seemed that he finally saw the dungeon for what it is, fighting in life-or-death situations. He's even shown his determination and preparation to move forward by getting a perfect score on the 7th floor's test on his first attempt. How could she put down his efforts like that? Aina opened her mouth, about to grant permission for Belle to traverse the 7th floor, only to close it in frustration. He was still only wearing the basic guild chest plate. Not to mention, Belle, what happened to you, dagger? The adventurer stiffened before giving an uncomfortable laugh. Sort of broke. But I got a better one. He quickly reached a hand behind him, hiding a blue flash, and brought it back to show his new weapon, which Aina gasped at the sight of. Amazing. Although she wasn't a blacksmith, Aina had seen plenty of weapons held by adventurers, and Belle's new dagger was clearly of high quality. Belle, where did you buy that? Belle coughed awkwardly. Didn't buy it. Aina's eyes bulged in their sockets. Belle, don't tell me dash. I didn't steal it. Belle quickly added in panic after realizing what his words implied. I got it. After killing a monster. His advisor raised an eyebrow. A monster was holding a weapon like that. I'm gonna need some context, Belle. It wasn't using it. It only had it on its body, so I was able to get it when I killed it. Oddly enough, Belle answered without lying once the whole time. After all, the giant snake hadn't been using the dagger, and yes, it had been on its body, considering it had been one of its fangs. So yeah, he's not lying. Wait, when did he suddenly learn how to misdirect the truth? Aina noted how Belle maintained eye contact with her, indicating that he was telling the truth. At least she could see that he was still as earnest as ever, and yet, that brief nervousness she saw made her think there was something more to it. For an adventurer holding such a weapon, to lose it on the upper levels of the dungeon, either it was stolen, which Belle would never do, or its original owner had been a starting adventurer who let the strength of their weapon get to their heads, resulting in their downfall. It wouldn't be the first time such a case has happened. Belle, did you see anyone near the monster? The boy blinked in surprise at the question. Oh, no. It was just me. So its owner is completely gone, poor soul. Okay, Belle. I'm glad you got a better weapon. Aina sadly smiled, knowing that it was at the expense of another As for Bell, he couldn't help but feel a bit confused by his advisor's acceptance. But hey, his not gonna question it. Makes it easier to avoid mentioning anything about the system. I guess that covers that. So I guess all that's left is, Bell, are you free tomorrow? HM. Tilda, Northern Horario Dawn, Tilda. Bell felt incredibly nervous and, funny enough, it wasn't even because of his date with Aina. Coming up. Wait, is it gonna be a date? Thinking about it. No, it didn't seem so. After all, Aina had told him they would just go out. To find better armor for him. That hardly sounds like a date, even if spending time with Aina. Outside her job sounds really lovely. Ah, no. He's got to focus right now. Bell gulped down air within one of the alleyways near the Loki familiar headquarters, the Twilight Manor. It was an enormous structure connecting several towers to form a singular building surrounded by outer pathways and gardens, all enclosed by moderately tall walls. Encircling the entire vicinity, the young adventurer stared at the building feeling as much dread as he did in awe, shakily, holding a bright yellow envelope containing a letter about the plant monsters he found in the sewers. He had already delivered a first letter to the Ganesha familiar by throwing it over the walls around their home, not knowing that the angry guard hit had immediately torn it up, rather than read it. And now all that's left is getting the second one to the Loki familiar. Phew. Here goes. Bell cocked his arm back with the letter between his index and middle fingers. He just has to get the letter over walls only a couple dozen yards away. He hopefully shouldn't be seen, either, thanks to the darkness of dawn and the shadows provided by Arario's walls. High up, with a wide, overhead swing, Bell flung the letter into the air, the envelope spinning like a blade as it soared in a perfect curve over the walls of the familiar home. Bell pumped his fist when he saw the letter disappear. Yes. What the fuck? Bell jumped with a squeal of dread from the roar of a furious werewolf. Which piece of shit threw that? Not hesitating for a second, Bell turned around and sprinted away like a scampering animal. After that terrifying close call, Bell finished the daily quest, gaining a pen from the random item box, before nervously waiting in front of a statue in the center of a plaza, the morning sun shining brightly on the area. He stood nervously while turning his head left to right, looking for any sign of the half-elf he's supposed to meet. Hey, Bell. Hearing her voice, the boy smiled as he turned his head. Ah, Miss Aina Dash. Bell lost his words the moment he laid eyes on Aina, mouth turning dry in stunned silence. He had grown so accustomed to seeing the woman in her guild uniform that he hadn't even considered seeing her in anything else. So to his surprise, his advisor was wearing a white blouse with a red skirt, thigh-high black socks, and brown boots, finished off with her glasses missing from her pretty face. The woman walked over to him with hands behind her back, her present smile enlarging, when she saw the effect she was having on the speechless boy in front of her. Good morning. You're really early, aren't you? Don't tell me you were looking forward to shopping with me that much. Aina teased. Bell finally snapped out of it, his cheeks reddening as he shyly looked down. Yeah, that's him. Aina giggled. Don't worry, Bell, I've been looking forward to this, too. She stepped forward and slightly leaned forward to him, making Bell look away. Don't you have anything to say about my outfit? She smirked. Bell turned back to her, his mouth moving before his brain did. I almost mistook you for a goddess. Yeah. Aina's face turned beet red at the bluntness of Bell's words, while Bell himself clasped his hands over his mouth with his face turning full crimson. Sorry. I didn't mean that. Wait, no. I mean I did but dash. Dash. I just didn't dash. It wasn't supposed to dash. Aina watched Bell trip over his words multiple times, her embarrassment at being compared to a goddess turning into amusement at his fumbling, bringing a feminine giggle as her blush faded. You've changed, Bell, and yet, this part about you is still exactly the same. When Aina said she would take him to find armor, Bell didn't think that meant going up Babel and entering one of the Hephaestus familiar's shops. His advisor reassured him that they were going to an area that'd be much more affordable, but Bell could feel his wallet shivering in fear as they walked by shops with weapons priced at 30 million valis. He gasped as he pressed his hands against a display glass, holding a large sword with a gold hilt. We're heading for the upper floor, but this is also part of the Hephaestus familiar's store. Although, it's mainly where all of the highest quality gear is sold. Don't worry, Bell, I don't want you buying anything from this area. Bell. Bell's eyes were completely engrossed in the blade behind the glass, his eyes seeing something that Aina couldn't. A Temper's Edge. Item class, C. Type, Greatsword. Attack, +40. A greatsword of power and endurance. Medium magic conductivity. It's C rank. Risaka's Fang is C rank too. Does that mean Risaka's Fang is worth at least 30 million Valis? Bell, are you alright? Why did you suddenly get so pale? The boy robotically turned his head to Aina, eyes blank. Sorry Miss Aina, it's just, learning a weapon's worth is really shocking. Aina merely tilted her head confusingly. After that financially shattering revelation, Bell shakily followed his advisor into an elevator. To the upper floor of the same shop, one far more affordable for him since the weapons and equipment present had been made by newer blacksmiths. It helped calm his nerves and relax. Now that he finally had a selection of equipment he could choose from, he didn't think about how he could probably buy half the things here if he sold Risaka's Fang. Looking around the back of the store since Aina was looking elsewhere, Bell walked around. In awe, everywhere he focused his eyes, messages from the system would pop up to reveal every piece of information about any armor he examined. It efficiently helped him sort through the armor he didn't want to buy, only that was a lot of the armor here. E rank, E rank, E rank again. Bell sighed as he realized that most, if not all, of the surrounding armor was the basic of the basic and didn't have the stats to justify spending all his money on them. He shouldn't be surprised, seeing as this was all the work of newer blacksmiths. Putting down an old chest plate, Bell took a few steps further around shelves of boxes before his eyes caught sight of a box with brighter steel-like armor, evidently recent. Stepping up to the box, Bell reached in and pulled out a reflective chest plate. Pyankichi MKII chest plate. Item class, D. Type, armor. +3% physical damage reduction. Light magic conductivity. Set effect will activate if this item is equipped along with Pyankichi MKII shoulder pads, Pyankichi MKII arm guards, Pyankichi MKII knee pads. Set effect 1. Locked. What? Bell blinked in bewilderment, the excited feeling from finding a D-rank piece of armor also adding confusion from the new feature he found. A set effect. He gently ran his thumb on the chest plate with wide eyes. So if I put on all the pieces, I'll get a bonus effect. Peering back into the box, Bell found the rest of the mentioned armor inside, each with effects similar to the chest plate, including the hinted bonus effect. He stared in wonder as he flipped over the chest plate and found the creator's signature on it. Welf Crozzo. Did Crozzo even know about his armor's effects, like the set bonus? Or was he unaware, and it had merely been by chance due to his abilities? Or what if it's the system that's specifically granting Bell any additional effects with this armor? Because if these effects, including the set bonus, are always on armor or weapons regardless of the system, seeing them would help him find only the best equipment and uncover any secrets they hold. Grinning excitedly, Bell looked at the price, only to flinch. 9,900 Valis. That's almost all I'm carrying on me. If only he could sell his Raikan fangs for Valis instead of system gold. Even if they are from the system, they are still monster parts, right? Maybe a blacksmith wouldn't ask questions about their origin if the parts are good enough to make. Wait a second. Bell pulled out one of the Raikan fangs and stared at it curiously. Can a blacksmith make equipment out of these? The thought brought yet another surge of excitement. Can monster drops he collects from the system be used as material instead of only being sold to the system's store? He'd have to find his own blacksmith, one he could trust, or at least not ask questions, in order to figure this out. But if he really could have equipment made from these items, that'd open a whole new door of potential. Dusk was falling over Orario when Bell and his advisor returned to the plaza, the boy smiling ear to ear as he felt the weight of his new armor in his small pack. Thanks for coming with me today, Miss Aina, he said as they stopped beside the statue, where they had met for their date. You don't need to thank me, Bell. I was the one who asked you to come with me in the first place. Aina smiled. There is one thing I wanted to ask, Where do you keep your new dagger, Bell? She asked curiously, making him tense. I saw you pull it out yesterday, but I didn't see you carrying any kind of sheath for it. Well. Bell nervously scratched the back of his head. I don't have a one for it. The only sheath I have is the one I had for my guild dagger, but it's too small. Oh, really? Maybe I should have bought you one of those too. Belle paused. 2. Aina's smile returned as she brought her hands from behind her, revealing a green piece of armor she had been hiding. Belle, take this. Heh. Despite his confusion, Belle reached out and received the item. What is? Lizard Arm Guard. Item class, E. Type armor. Plus 2% physical damage reduction. An arm guard. Did you buy this for me, Miss Aina? It's a present. Aina beamed. Make sure to use it well. What? I can't accept this. Belle stammered, shocked that such an attractive and well-meaning woman would buy him such a gift. I wish you would, Belle. For your sake, not mine. Belle quieted as he saw his advisor's smile turn sad, her eyes losing some of their light as she looked down in forlorn memory. You never know when an adventurer is going to die. I know a lot of adventurers who never came back. You almost didn't come back. Belle stiffened as he saw himself bleeding out on the altar, making him tightly grip the arm guard. I don't want you to die, Belle. Aina continued, looking back into his eyes. I always want you to return home. So what I'm saying is... She tilted her head and gave him a shy, close-eyed smile that made her practically glowing. I guess this is for my sake. When I saw how hard you were working, I wanted to help. I want to make sure you always come back, Belle. So, take it, okay. Belle felt his heart soar at the beautiful image of the kind woman before him, and he couldn't stop himself from reaching forward and wrapping her in a tight, heartfelt embrace. Hey, BB Belle. Aina cried out, her face bursting red. Thank you, he whispered, those 2 words full of emotion. I'll always come back to you. Miss Aina, I promise. Thank you for being my advisor. Aina's growing embarrassment ceased from the pure gratitude she heard in Belle's voice. She relaxed in his arms with a soft smile forming, returning the hug with closed eyes and her hands on his back. Thank you for always putting up with my selfishness, Belle. She whispered back. Belle. Millimeter. Are you gonna let go now? A-dash. Realizing how intimate his embrace was with such a beautiful woman, Belle jumped back as if, having been burned, his entire body resembling a tomato. I am sorry. As he started a spiel about impulsively acting on the moment, and how he was so sorry for invading her personal space, Aina merely smiled, ignoring her rapidly beating heart. Yep, still exactly the same. Why did I do that? Belle groaned into his hands as he went through a few alleyways leading back home. His cheeks were still burning from what he had done, despite Aina waving it off with a smile, rather than calling him out on it. It's not like me to be that brave. He was actually surprised he hadn't completely shut down after having hugged Aina so close. Like that. The only other person he's ever hugged that tightly is Hestia, and that's because he's gotten used to her tight embraces after so many of them. Belle's eye twitched as he walked into an opening of sunlight leaking into the alleyway he was walking through, prompting him to look up at the reddish-purplish sky. It got later than expected. He muttered, absent-mindedly moving into a slider wider path. His squinting eyes shot open as he sensed something, prompting him to turn left just in time to see a small figure in a red hood running right at him with their head down. Careful. Belle caught the person in his arms as they ran right into him, hearing a feminine grunt signifying a young girl as her hood fell back, revealing a set of chestnut-colored hair. The girl didn't look up at him. Instead, she realized she bumped into someone, and lowered her head in apologetic submission. Are you all right? Belle gently held the small girl by her shoulders as he got the briefest of glances at her small frame. A sudden shout cut off any sort of response he could have received. You're not getting away anymore, you damn Palom. Belle felt the girl tense in his arms, telling him all he needed to know. He looked forward and saw a furious man with dark hair and a ponytail running towards them with his sword swinging. Quickly letting go of the girl, Belle got in front of her while summoning Rasaka's fang, holding up his weapon to meet with the opposing blade. With a cracking sound echoing on impact, the sword bounced off the dagger, making the aggravated man stagger back in surprise. A moment of silence ensued as all 3 pairs of eyes widened, for when Belle had parried the sword back with his new weapon, a small crack had engraved in the man's blade. Oh, why you cracked my sword? The man partly stammered in disbelief before shifting back into unbridled fury. You little shit. Are you with her? Hey. No. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna let you cut down a small girl like that. Belle retorted. The man's eyes darkened. TSK. Then I'll kill you first, you brat. Warning. You sense someone with immense bloodlust in close proximity. Belle felt it. He felt it right before the sound of the alert had even come up. Bloodlust. His pupils shrunk as his breathing hitched, instincts kicking in as he quickly brandished his dagger and took a defensive position with a still form and pinprick eyes. Belle couldn't see it, but for a brief moment, his ruby-red eyes glowed ominously with a tinge of purple. The angry swordsman froze in place with wide eyes, suddenly feeling something off about the boy in front of him. All seemed still, at least until a new voice arrived. Stop. Both males shivered at the icy voice that could freeze entire oceans. Belle looked and immediately felt a bout of dread fill his veins. Both holding a bag of groceries each, he saw not only the beautiful bluish-gray-haired waitress from that restaurant, but also the captivating short-haired elf that had pinned him to the wall, the former lighting up when she saw him while the latter menacingly glared at the man holding the sword. Aha! Look, Ryu, we found him. The human girl pointed excitedly. But Belle was barely even paying attention to her because of the elf. She's strong. He could practically see an incredible aura of power radiating from the waitress. She's definitely a higher level than him, overwhelmingly so. She has to at least be level 3-4. Belle's senses to be warning him like this, so much that even though the elf doesn't have a name portrayed above her head, he has no doubt she'd have a red one. TSK, can you all just stay out of this? The unwelcome, furious man snapped at the new arrivals, not seeing the same thing Belle did. Get lost already, you dash. Stop barking. Right then, the elf's glare became outright murderous, her aura flaring even more prominently, to the point where Belle broke into a cold sweat and backed up. I don't want to resort to violence. I always end up going too far. He wanted to run, especially when he remembered his last meeting with the elf, but he didn't want to suddenly leave the Palum girl behind him. Taking a subtle glance over his shoulder, Belle realized that said girl was already gone. He could have run earlier. Damn it, could he still run now? No, they were both looking at him now, even ignoring the other man, who was hardly a threat. You won't have to worry about him. The human girl spoke to him cheerfully. This man was just leaving, right? She finished threateningly at the swordsman. The aggressive man was shivering at this point, both out of anger and fear towards the elf he could tell was dangerous. NGH. Damn it. With his angry cry, he turned and ran away, leaving Belle with an even more dangerous threat than before. Just his luck. The human girl's smile grew bigger as she approached him. Now that he's gone, we can talk. It's finally nice to meet you, Belle. Oh no. They know his name. In a last-ditch effort, Belle turned around and activated sprint to get away. But he didn't even get 2 steps before a hand yanked his left back. Gua! He almost swung his dagger on instinct but managed to hold back, knowing that he'd be taken down in less than a second if he did so, violently, at that. Excuse me, we wish to speak with you, came the polite voice of the elf who had grabbed him in an instant. He could feel her holding his hand tightly, not intent on letting go. Taking a nervous gulp of air, he slowly turned back to the girl, who now had a neutral gaze on her impassive face. Please don't hurt me. Because what else is he supposed to say against a beautiful woman that can kick his ass? His Gramps had always told him that was one of the most terrifying things a hero can face, especially when they are angry. But surprisingly, what? Out of all the reactions he expected to receive from the elf, a look of scandalized horror wasn't one of them. Harm you? I would never do such a thing to an innocent person. What? Now Belle was just confused, his expression matching his current feelings. But, didn't you rob me at knife point with the other girl? The elf's expression somehow turned even more mortified. I rob you? That's dash. Why dash? Is that what you've been thinking of us this entire time? Common criminals. Well, much more prettier, but… Hee, it seems like there's a teeny misunderstanding here. Belle turned to the giggling girl. Beside him, her gleaming eyes staring into his own in clear interest. First, let me introduce myself. I'm SYR Flover, and this is my friend, Ryu Lion. We both work at the hostess of Fertility. You've seen the pub, right? Yes. Belle returned, still incredibly nervous being around the elf, Ryu. And you're Belle, right? The human girl, SYR, continued with a big smile, yet it only made him tense. And not to be rude, but how do you know my name? He asked cautiously. Our co-workers heard your companion mention it when they had encountered you yesterday, Ryu answered, still partially annoyed as she recalled the trouble they had caused. I'm really sorry about them. SYR spoke up, hiding cutely behind her bag of produce. I asked them to help me look for you. I just wanted to talk to you again so we could give you back the drop item you left behind. Belle gasped. You still have it? SYR smiled behind the bag, seeing that she hooked him. She peeked at him cutely, putting on a quivering lip and guilty-looking watery eyes. We do. I really wanted to give it back and thank you for being so kind when you helped me up, but then you kept avoiding me. That really hurt, you know. Rather than panicking and immediately apologizing at the sight of her growing tears, Belle stared perplexed at the human girl. Something felt off for some reason, another weird feeling that he couldn't quite explain. But what it's telling him is, are you fake crying right now? He asked aloud. SYR's eyes widened, as did Ryu's. What dash? How could you say that about a woman's tears? SYR stammered, caught off guard by the call-out. You're very perceptive. Ryu. SYR turned to her friend in betrayal. I was right. Belle was surprised by that. It had only been an odd feeling. Mr. Bell. Ryu started, ignoring her pouting friend as she stared into his eyes sincerely. I wish to apologize for my actions before. At the time, I had assumed you had ill intent toward SYR when you were simply trying to help her. I acted without thinking, frightening you and making you lose an item of value. She bowed her head. I'm truly sorry. Belle felt his cheeks redden from receiving such a formal yet sincere apology. It's okay. You were only looking out for your friend. I think it's really admirable that you were willing to act so fast for her. I forgive you. He spoke in quick succession. Ryu lifted her head, looking relieved. Thank you. It had been bothering me for some time now. I didn't harm you badly, did I? No, I was fine, Belle reassured. Great. SYR cut in happily. Now that that's over, want to come with us so we can give your monster drop back? Right now. Oh. Belle started unsurely, seeing as it had already reached night during their talk. We'll also treat you to a meal. SYR hurriedly added, hoping to convince him. Please. Ryu was even going as far as to hold your hand. The waitress trailed off with a look of disbelief. Belle and Ryu blinked at the statement before looking down at their clasped palms. It was then that the reality of the situation hit them. Ryu's eyes widened in pure astonishment, cheeks reddening. She's holding hands with a man. She hadn't even thought about her aversion to touch when she had reached out and grabbed the boy so that he wouldn't run away from her. And even more so, she's been holding his hand for the entire time up to now. And even more so, she still wasn't smacking it away despite the realization. The words of her former familiar captain flashed through her mind. Ryu, if a man ever comes along and is able to grab your hand, don't let him go. It can't be. As for Belle, he saw the exact moment Ryu's realization of their contact struck. The immediate widening of her eyes, her shortness of breath, and her tensing posture as she stared at their connecting limbs. Blood rushing through his face, Belle was the one to pull away while jumping back. I am sorry. He shouted for the second time in the day as he got into a perfect 90-degree bow, knowing how elves avoided the touch of others. Even after he let go, Ryu stared at her hand like a puzzle to be solved, that gaze then moving to Belle with a hint of fluster. No, I was the one who had reached out to you. You have no need to apologize, she said, looking away somewhat bashfully. Belle didn't look up, nor did Ryu look at him as she organized her thoughts in the following silence, with SYR staring incredulously at her friend from what she had just seen. May I ask for your full name? Ryu asked after a moment, slightly hiding her face behind her bag of groceries. Belle Crenel. Belle answered, still bowing. Mr. Crenel, then. Would you consider our offer to dine in our pub? It was then that Belle finally looked up at the elf, surprised that she hadn't been offended in any way by their prolonged touch. She still seemed caught off guard by it, but maybe she didn't stress about it as much? Well, he stood up and took a moment to think about her offer. It was already getting late, and his goddess would get worried sick if he didn't return soon. He's scared her far too many times lately because of the system, and he'd rather not keep doing so through his own inconsiderate actions. He's deeply relieved that he doesn't have to worry about anyone hunting him down anymore. But no doubt Hestia would still be worried and a little suspicious of the girls and the pub. Because of what had happened involving them so far, he would have to go to the pub, regardless, to collect the minotaur skin, but he might as well use the chance to bring his goddess and clear everything up. Plan in mind, he smiled. My goddess is waiting for me to get home right now, so I can't go today. But if it's all right, can I stop by for dinner tomorrow and bring her with me? Of course. Syr immediately responded brightly. We'd love to have you both. As for Ryu, she nodded in understanding, hesitantly turning her eyes back to Belle with a hint of curiosity in her returned calm gaze. That would be fine. We also owe her an apology for the trouble we've caused you. Was she the woman you were with when Chloe and Anya found you? Assuming you're talking about those two cat people, then yes. He looked down fondly as he thought about her. She's precious to me. It wasn't long until Belle said goodbye to both women, promising to visit the pub the next day, and started running home, a huge weight of worries removed from his shoulders since he learned that all his concerns had been one big misunderstanding. As for Syr and Ryu, they watched him disappear on his way, with the former then turning to the latter with astonishment. Wow, I didn't think he'd be able to touch you, Ryu. She pointed out, bringing a slight blush to the elf's cheeks. He must be something really special, right? She teased at the end. Ryu merely looked back down at her hand in wonder, once more recalling her former captain's words. Ryu, if a man ever comes along and is able to grab your hand, don't let him go. Does it count if I'm the one who grabbed his hand? That question would bother her for quite some time. Tilda, ruined church night, or Tilda? What? Are you serious, Belle? The adventurer nodded in confirmation to her question, seated cross-legged on the bed across a wide-eyed Hestia. He had only just arrived home before telling his goddess about his encounter with the two waitresses, explaining what happened and their offered apologies for their actions towards him. They even have the minotaur skin still with them and invited me to eat when I go to their pub tomorrow to get it. Hestia gasped before crawling up to him, grabbing his shoulders. But Belle, what if it's a trap? Those hussies could be using your innocence to trick you into walking right in their territory before doing unspeakable things to you. Like what? I said unspeakable for a reason, Belle. She returned, cheeks pink. Slightly confused but getting the idea that he shouldn't go alone with them, Belle smiled and put a palm on Hestia's head, gently rubbing it. I can take you with me. They told me that their pub tends to stay open for later hours of the day. We can go there together after you're done with work. Slightly relaxing from Belle's rubbing her head, Hestia cooed as her body loosened up, slumping against the boy's chest. But are you sure, Belle? She still asked. I am. He answered assuredly, continuing his caressing. It felt like they were being completely sincere. I don't know why. Hestia looked up at him, and her cheeks puffed in annoyance. There you go trusting girls again, Belle. Were they that pretty? Hey. No, it's not like that. The boy quickly put down her assumption with pink cheeks. I don't really know how to explain it. I sort of just knew. His explanation didn't seem to convince the goddess in the slightest, judging by her twitching. But at least she didn't immediately forbid him from planning to go to the pub. I'll go with you there, but it won't count, okay? Hey, what won't count? Belle tilted his head. It won't count as our date, okay? We'll go out another time where it'll be just us. Hestia huffed. Belle blinked a few times in surprise before an amused smile took to his face. He gave his goddess's head a few reassuring pats before answering her. Of course. I'll be looking forward to it, Hestia. The short woman's expression finally brightened as she tightly wrapped him up in a hug with her head on his chest, nuzzling herself against him while muttering happy things. The pair went to sleep afterward, with Belle dozing on the couch while Hestia grumpily slept on the bed, annoyed that he wouldn't sleep on it with her. They had slept together on the sofa, the day they returned from the Dien sect familiar, so why not now? Sure, it had only been because both had been emotionally vulnerable after the fifth floor incident, but that didn't mean they had to stop now. Stupid Belle. Hestia whined as she waited until the boy was asleep, to which she left the softness of her bed. As per habit, she once more slipped under the blanket covering Belle and snuggled against him, resting her head on his chest. A smile of bliss formed on the goddess as she felt the gently elevating chest of the mortal, wishing to never have it stop. "I love you, Belle," she whispered, easily slumbering away thanks to the warmth of her child. The sounds of their breathing filled the room as midnight arrived, introducing the start of the day, and brought with it was a subtle purple glow covering Belle. Belle's internal clock had him waking up somewhat before dawn, as he usually does. He opened his eyes to the gently lit area of the church's basement, blinking a few times to wake up, only to realize that he was already awake with no tiredness whatsoever. He still had to rub away the morning crust in his eyes, but aside from that, there wasn't any sign of sleep inertia that had usually come from waking up. No blurriness in his vision, no feelings of grogginess, not even a single yawn coming out of his mouth. Odd. Waking up early and jump-starting himself for the day had never been hard for Belle, but it had never felt this effortless. Yes, it had become much easier ever since gaining the system. No doubt from how it improved his body, but there had always been some form of tiredness. Whenever he got up, Belle frowned a bit as he moved to sit up, only to pause as he registered the extra weight on his chest, looking down to find his small goddess right on top of him, snoozing away. She really has to stop climbing in with me. With expert movements developed from weeks of escaping in the morning, Belle wiggled himself out of Hestia's grasp while simultaneously replacing himself with a pillow for her to hold. Smiling satisfactorily that he didn't wake her up, the novice adventurer stood up and headed into their bathroom while stretching his arms, feeling no morning heaviness in his body. If anything, this is probably the best I've felt waking up. Putting it off as another thing of the system, because what else can it be? Belle entered the bathroom while pulling his shirt over his head, placing himself in front of the sink where their tipped and slightly cracked mirror stood. He leaned forward and splashed his face with water to give it a quick clean, wiping it down with a towel before looking up to see. "Hey!" Belle froze as he caught sight of his reflection. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and looked back up at himself. "What the what?" In the other room, Hestia shouted as she was startled awake, tumbling off the sofa and crashing to the floor with the blanket and pillow falling on top of her. But she didn't linger as she sat up, awake in an instant just from hearing her favorite mortal's distress. "Belle!" She climbed to her feet but yelped as she almost slipped on the blanket, stumbling into the bathroom and catching herself in the doorway. "Belle, are you okay? I heard you," screamed Dash. The rest of her words died the moment her bewildered Belle turned and presented himself with outstretched arms. "Hestia, look what happened, I changed." Incoherent sounds came out of Hestia's mouth as her pupils dilated to the brim like a cat, her mouth hanging open and her breathing all but stopping. Her Belle, her adorable Belle, was right in front of her, but more. If her mind had been able to think coherently at the time, Hestia would have said it was like he had suddenly grown up while still keeping everything already perfect about him. The baby fat on his face was gone, leaving him with a sharper chin and strong jawline for an equally handsome and cute face. His snow-white hair was neater and naturally swept to his right, while still looking soft to the touch but even silkier than before, and his lean frame was more defined than ever, holding magnificent biceps, glorious chest muscles, and marvelous, stunning, ravaging 8. Overloaded by all the blood suddenly rushing to her face, Hestia fell back, with all of it bursting out of her nose. "Hestia!" Belle caught her in his arms before she could hit the ground, alarm all over his dangerously stunning face. "What happened? Speak to me." "Buihahe, abs." Hestia. A goddess reached enlightenment that day, and not far in the future, many others would face the same fate. Chapter end notes. And there we go. Now we got the Chad Bell who's gonna build a whole new religion on just his body, Naihiha. By the way, Bell's appearance is basically the Argonaut from Tilda Memoria Freeze Tilda, so look him up and compare his face with Bell's if you want a clear picture of his facial appearance. He's also now 2 inches taller to match Argonaut's height. I just found this fitting for his change to make him look like an exact replica of the most famous hero. The only distinction should really be the dense muscles Bell has on his still lean frame. Next time, we'll have Lily appear, and hopefully our first piece of magic that isn't Firebolt. Don't be shy to share any ideas you have on what kind of magic or even skills he should get, because besides some, if not all, of the abilities heal. Get from solo leveling canon, I'll probably still want him to have his own things. Until next time. Chapter notes. Belle spends the day as a Chad. Only just another month and a new chapter already. Crazy, right? I won't talk too much here, but in my post notes, I'll have a few things to say. Besides that, enjoy the chapter with Chatter, more confident and aware Belle. Thanks, system. Winky face. See the end of the chapter for more. Notes. Thank you to Kaiserblack for commissioning fan art for this story by artist Miller Green. Effie. https://twitter.com/millergreenep. Hi. It looks absolutely amazing and very inspiring for me to continue. Using both the Argonaut's sword and Belle's clothes from the Arrow of Orion movie was really great. I'll definitely have an item based on it added from the system at some point. Not sure if this'll be Belle's final appearance clothing-wise in the fic, but it's pretty damn good. Enjoy reading this next chapter. https://drive.google.com/file/d/4/1QPJJ-007BYM4FFRX5G1P6EUQLFK2/view?. USP equals sharing. Paste panting joined the sounds of the morning breeze as Belle ran faster than ever across the walls, the accumulating sweat on his chiseled frame reflecting the light of dawn over his body. With a large smile, Belle dashed enthusiastically toward his starting point, hearing the system's ping as he neared his destination. Feeling daring, he jumped high and flipped several times in the air before sticking the landing right by his belongings, landing in a perfect T pose. Amazing. He gushed as he looked down at his perfect body. I really don't feel tired now. His exercises no longer felt like a challenge, so much so that Belle had just finished them in record time. And to top it off, he didn't feel the slightest bit sore or exhausted, which means, now I can definitely hold the status recovery in the dungeon, he grinned. I'm going to save so much on potions. The thought had him pause from a realization. I haven't visited Naza or Myaxama in a while. Ever since gaining the system, going through the upper floors of Arario's dungeon was practically a breeze, primarily because of his body's faster growth and increasing fitness. As a result, he really hadn't needed to use potions lately besides that time in the instant dungeon. And even then, he just got one back from the random item box the previous day. Checking his inventory, Belle could see still 2 basic potions left. I guess I could go visit, but it'd be rude if I didn't buy something while there. Maybe another basic potion and a magic potion. It should refill my mana since it counts as mind. But it's already kinda late because of how much time Hestia spent hugging me. Belle's sweat dropped as he recalled the chaotic morning he had. Hestia, I have to go get started on the daily quest. Let go of me. New. 5 more minutes. His goddess muffled, arms wrapped around him as tight as an anaconda as she shoved her face in his abs. That's the 4th time you've said that. Belle would have never guessed that the toughest challenge of his life would have been physically separating himself from his own goddess. Having initially panicked over Hestia passing out, Belle had stuffed her bloody nose with tissues before waiting for her to wake up on the couch, which luckily didn't take too long. However, the moment she got back up, Hestia had practically glued herself to his midriff, acting like a drunk, leery old man trying to shove themselves into a bountiful paradise. Belle's desperate pleas to let him go had only made things worse, as besides the obvious changes to his body, his voice had become huskier. While it wasn't anything close to hoarse or gruff like an old man, it was still a big step from his childlike, high-pitched voice, now slightly deeper but still holding that soft and earnest manner it had before. Apparently, Hestia had found this change to be as attractive as his physical ones, so every attempt to beg her to stop shoving her face into his new muscles didn't dissuade her from holding on to him. He had to threaten to sleep somewhere else to finally get her off him. Haha, that certainly was something, he tiredly chuckled. But I should be heading to the dungeon already, so I'll visit Myaxama tomorrow morning. With his plan in mind, Belle grabbed a prepared wet towel from his inventory and started wiping down his sweating body, only to freeze yet again at a familiar feeling. Okay, I'm definitely being watched. This time, he was absolutely sure of it. The intensity of the sensation was too obvious not to notice. Belle sharply turned his head, but the feeling had left as fast as it had arrived, so he could only vaguely tell that it came from the direction of Babel Tower. Scary. He shivered. He hadn't addressed the lingering gazes the system had reported, but someone really was taking the time to watch him. But who? He can't think of anyone that would be that interested in him unless the system owner. Belle whispered, looking outward at the city with wide eyes. It'd make the most sense. After all, he hadn't started feeling these gazes until after getting the system. Could it be the creator, Candiaru, occasionally checking on his progress? But then, why would the system warn him that someone's watching him? Is it acting as an automatic force that even warned against its creator? It seemed like the best theory for now. After all, there shouldn't be any other reason someone would be so interested in him in the first place. A Tower of Babel, Tilda. Through testing small glimpses and cautious staring, Freya realized that as long as she didn't attempt to peer too closely into Belle's soul, she wouldn't provoke whatever dangerous being was held within, letting her indulge in the sight of him to her pleasure. And yet, she had already nearly tested that limit. Oh my. Freya pressed her hands against the glass of her newly acquired divine mirror, her flushing face so close to the surface that her heavy breathing fogged up the sight before her. It had only been 2 days ago when the goddess had finally found the unique child she had been searching for, but he had certainly not looked the way he did now. He had looked absolutely precious before, but now, he looked absolutely ravishing. What has happened to you? Freya's wide eyes were utterly smitten by Belle's new athletic form, her loins quivering at the sight of such perfection. While she wasn't a stranger to such muscled frames, his is so much more to her. It had been a wholly unexpected but welcome change that she had no explanation for. She had been so shocked that she had almost used her divine sight to peer too deep into her orders. Soul once more, only barely able to pull back just as the boy had turned around sharply. She wants him. She wants him so badly that it hurts. I can't. I mustn't. Tilda. Freya panted as the feeling between her legs worsened. And no. Good. I was planning to only watch him for a while, but I must do something to satisfy my curiosity. She watched with crimson cheeks and shaking pupils as Belle quickly picked up his stuff, before rushing down the stairs and out of her sight, leaving the goddess with a disappointed pang of longing for another view of his dense frame. She gasped at a particular twitch below. I must know more. Smiling ear to ear, Freya turned away from her mirror and shakily stumbled to a wall lined with books, grabbing a specific white one of decent size. She held the item in her hands, giggling like a schoolgirl as she thought about passing it as a proper apology for before. Show me a glimpse of the power that sleeps inside you, Tilda. Belle felt relieved that he didn't feel any more gazes when he reached the bottom of the walls. He felt too uncomfortable being watched by something he didn't completely understand, as anyone should be. I should wait to accept my rewards from now on, he decided, planning to ensure he wasn't on the walls when doing anything with the system. Speaking of which, time to accept his rewards now that he's alone again. Accept stat points. OSTR, E461. OVIT, E431. ODEX, E482. OAGI, B727. MAG, H140. ASEN, E402. Remaining points, 150. Something Belle had decided to do since the instant dungeon was save a certain amount of his stat points at all times for emergencies. While sorting them out evenly right away was okay. He realized after fighting the giant snake Rasaka that there might be times when he'll need a higher boost in a particular stat rather than equal ones. Keeping 100 to use at once should be enough to make a difference in battle. He nodded to himself. 50 to magic. Mag, H140-H190. Maybe it's still not the best use of his stats, but he's gonna keep hoping for magic. Damn it. Moving on, Belle realized the daily growth he got from Arario's dungeon paled in comparison to what he received in the instant dungeon in a single day. Sure, his growth in Arario's dungeon is still far beyond what any average adventurer makes in a trip, but he'd actually prefer going through more instant dungeons if it meant growing through such large jumps. The sudden bursts of growth did make things somewhat awkward for him, as growing so much in the instant dungeon meant that he needed to go even lower in Arario's dungeon to find monsters more suited for him, something Aina would no doubt have a heart attack over. But Belle isn't even sure the 7th floor would be anything close to that instant dungeon for him in terms of difficulty, even if he didn't have the armor he bought with Aina. Oh, speaking of which, reveal. Bell looked down as his new set of armor, including the arm brace Aina had gotten him, materialized on his body. And since he was wearing each piece of Welf Crozzo's armor, the set effect revealed itself to him. Set effect 1, plus 2% dexterity. Dexterity helps the most with control and proficiency in actions, such as accuracy, controlling attacks or speed, and learning to evade attacks. A decent effect to have overall. Random item box. Bell wasted no time opening the box as it appeared in his hand, only to freeze at what he received. Item, dungeon key. Item class, D. Type, key. A key that allows you to create an instant dungeon. You may use this at the center of the 5th floor of Arario's dungeon. Another key. Bell gasped, almost dropping the item in shock. He hadn't expected another one so soon, especially since he had just conquered the first instant dungeon about 2 days ago. And this one is D rank. So the instant dungeon is going to be D rank, too. Bell wasn't sure how to interpret the ranks of these keys in terms of the difficulty of the created dungeons. Are the ranks meant to show the difficulty of the dungeons based on his current strength? Or is it just comparing it to overall strength by levels? Bell didn't know, but either way, he didn't feel good about getting this key so soon. Sure, he had just been thinking how his growth in the instant dungeon was terrific, but a D rank dungeon so soon after an E rank one. Maybe it would be best to hold off. Our quest has arrived. Quest directions. Normal quest, conquer the dungeon. Use the dungeon key and conquer the instant dungeon to further increase your power. Quest completion requirement. Complete the D-rank dungeon. Reward, the by function of the shop. Okay, well that changes things. I can unlock the shop. Bell giddily wondered what sorts of things such a mysterious entity would sell. If the system gave him Rasaka's Fang, then the shop had to have other amazing and unique weapons just like it, right? But would he even be ready for this next dungeon? If the system is giving me this quest now, then it must think I'm ready, right? It isn't like he's planning to use that as an excuse to convince Hestia to let him go into another instant dungeon so soon, and it's definitely not just so he could shop from a mysterious face. They don't understand. Definitely not. Babel Plaza morning, He was being watched again. But funny enough, it felt completely different from the intense gazes he's been experiencing ever since gaining the system. Rather, it felt like he was being watched in every direction. And while he had assumed the feeling would disappear on his way to the dungeon, for some reason, it had only grown even more. Standing in the large, circular plaza surrounding Babel, Bell nervously looked around, trying to figure out why so many pairs of eyes were on him. First, he noticed that the stares aimed at him were primarily female and awestruck, with any male gazes simply looking jealous. Bell turned his head and met the gaze of a girl for the 4th time, only for her to abruptly turn away with a blush as she walked away. He doesn't have anything on his face, does he? He made sure to clean it pretty well earlier. Why does every girl seem to blush or already be blushing when he looks at them? Wait a damn second. The realization struck like a bolt of lightning, and Bell sharply turned to the gaze of a cat girl passing by. Her face flushed at being caught, making Bell blush at realizing she wasn't staring at something on him, but at him. Oh gods! He whispered as the girl quickly retreated towards the dungeon. He raised his arm before him and saw his new muscles being hugged by his smaller shirt. Is this what Gramps told me about turning heads? Am I popular now? Bell felt as happy as he did distraught at the thought, because despite desiring so many people to love in the future, he still has no idea how to actually go about girls and their attention. And wait, is someone approaching him right now? He's not mistaking it, right? Oh, gods, he isn't. There's someone walking up behind him. Did one of the staring girls actually decide to talk to him? What is he supposed to say if she invites him on a date? Wait, no. Isn't it supposed to be the guy that asks them Mister, you with the white hair? Bell's frantic thoughts abruptly cut off at the sound of a much younger voice than he expected. He hesitantly turned around, only to be puzzled by the sight of a large backpack. A talking backpack. Wait, no, that's stupid. He wisely looked down and saw the form of a small girl. Bell quickly noted her appearance, barely half his height, with chestnut-colored eyes. She was wearing a cream-colored robe with its hood over another torn red hood that covered most of her chestnut-colored hair. He faintly recognized it from the girl he had encountered just the previous day. But this time, she had small straps over her shoulders connecting to a backpack, at least 3 times her size. Despite calling out to him, the girl had become still and silent, her cheeks pinkening as she stared at him in astonishment, like she had just seen something completely unexpected. But Bell wasn't focused on that. Instead, he was more centered on the familiarity of the girl's hair. "You're the falna from yesterday." His words seemed to snap the girl out of whatever shock she was in, as she shook her head, before putting on an earnest smile. "Falna? You must be mistaken, mister." The girl reached up and pulled her hood back, revealing a set of animal ears. Lily is a chianthrope. Bell leaned down and stared closely at the ears that flopped up, seeing them move like an actual set of animal ears. He even reached forward and felt them with his hand, earning a squeak from the girl. They are real. Is she someone different after all? He wondered as he absent-mindedly rubbed them. "And mister, you can't just touch them like that." Lily whined with a slight blush, snapping Bell to his senses. "Ah." He jumped back. "Sorry." He shyly turned away with a blush. He started, trying to move on from that awkward moment. "So, why did you call out to me?" Holding her ears, the girl looked up at him energetically. "Are you in need of a supporter?" "A supporter?" Bell asked in surprise. The girl nodded. "Yup. Lily noticed that you're carrying a backpack like solo adventurers do, so she came to offer her services as a supporter. Is there a reason why you're talking in the third person?" Lily cutely tilted her head. "What do you mean? Lily has always talked this way." "I see." Not knowing what to make of that, Belle addressed her request. "So you want to be my supporter?" Lily nodded eagerly. Thinking back, Belle remembered Aina suggesting he hire a supporter, given his progress in the dungeon. Not only would having another person be more reassuring, but he'd be able to focus on slaying monsters and picking up their magic stones twice as fast, meaning bigger profits with saved time. And yet, he wondered if he actually needed one. With the inventory function of the system, Bell doesn't actually need a supporter to carry anything for him, and while having another person to help pick up magic stones would be convenient, is it worth the risk of them finding out anything about the system? Bell wasn't sure, but it wouldn't hurt talking to the girl about it. So a minute later, he and the girl, introducing herself as Lilaruka Ard, were seated by a fountain near the end of the large plaza. "Why did you talk to me specifically, Miss Lilaruka?" Bell asked first. Like Lily said, she saw you alone and equipped with your own backpack, so she thought it would be a good chance for some work. She slightly leaned forward and looked up at him in anticipation. "So how about it, mister? Do you need a supporter?" "Well," Bell put a hand to his chin as he looked down in thought. "The benefits of having a supporter will definitely outweigh his concerns if he's careful not to reveal the system. Not only would having a supporter help with the dungeon overall, but it would also justify the large amounts of magic stones he's been gaining recently thanks to his body's higher performance, which has been getting him weird looks from the guild staff lately." Bell could only guess the only reason the guild staff hadn't confronted him yet was because the amount of stones he constantly exchanges from his backpack wasn't considered significant enough to warrant a confrontation, considering it pales in comparison to the insane wealth that higher-level adventurers obtain. So having Lily will help him a lot. Worst-case scenario, she sees him use his inventory function, but he could just play it off as a skill, and as long as he pretends to reach into his backpack for whatever he needs, it won't even reach that point. Nodding to himself, Bell looked back down at the girl with a smile. "You know what? I think I would appreciate a supporter." Lily's smile grew. "Then would you take me, mister?" Bell opened his mouth to answer, only for a ring to cut him off. "A falna has requested to accompany you. Will you allow it?" He froze. A request to accompany him? As in Lily. What does that mean? And, wait, a falna? But that doesn't make sense. Lily clearly has the ears of a chianthrope. So why? "Mister," Lily cutely called out, taking his silence as hesitation. "I'm really poor. I don't know if I've got enough to get by right now. Not to mention." She shyly turned away with her hands going over her ears. "Having a boy touch something so important to me. You need to take responsibility, don't you?" Bell felt several things at that moment. Embarrassment that he had basically manhandled Lily's ears, the lingering confusion from the message he had just received from the system. And last, another weird feeling. It felt nearly the same as when he had met that human girl, SYR, the previous day. But why? It almost feels like he shouldn't just agree straight away to her request. But he knows that already. It's just common sense to at least ask some questions to a stranger asking to work with him. So why the feeling? Is it because Lily looks so much like the girl from yesterday? But he didn't actually see her face, and she clearly has the ears of a chianthrope, so he should be giving her the benefit of the doubt. And yet, the system is clearly telling him that she's a palnum, so what if it really is her? But then why would she hide that they've met already? And where did those ears come from? Mr. Lily hesitantly turned back since he hadn't answered her yet. You wouldn't let Lily starve, would you? Belle tensed, noticing that Lily did look skinny even with the robe on. She really did look like she needed the funds. He didn't have it in him to turn her away. He nodded with an earnest smile. Okay, Lily, I'd love to have you. A palnum has joined your party. Belle blinked several times as Lily cheered happily. Thank you very much. Let's do our best. She promised bubbly. Why yeah? Belle stammered, a little dismayed that the system had accepted the invite when he hadn't even read the entirety of the first message yet. He finally did so as he and Lily started making their way to the dungeon, a new sense of bafflement filling him from the provided information. Party members can access the movement magic circles, and depending on the contribution, share Excelia. The player will have the ability to see the status pages of those in their party. Again, there are so many things for Belle to address right now. It feels like he's been doing that a lot today. First, movement magic circles. What even are those? Are they the portals that took him to the desert and instant dungeon? If so, doesn't that mean he can take Lily and others into the instant dungeons as long as they are considered part of his party? Second, he shares Excelia with party members. If it depends on contribution, then doesn't that mean that if he hypothetically sits back and lets Lily kill the monsters, she'd grow as fast as he is now? That's basically like a growth skill for others. Belle pictured Hestia screaming and shaking him that if anyone learned of this, Auroreo might actually be destroyed over him. Scary. He shivered, much to Lily's confusion at his side. And lastly, he can see the status of those in his party. Not only is that dangerous, but it's a massive invasion of privacy that completely violates the norms of secrecy in Auroreo. Gods, what is he even supposed to do with this? There's no way he'll just look at another person's status like that. Would he even be able to read it since it's runes on a person's back? Or would the system translate it like it's been showing for his own status the entire time? Belle-sama, are you alright? Lily asked, noticing something akin to paranoia on her employer's face for the last minute as they entered the first floor. Hey. Oh, yes. I'm a little nervous because this is gonna be my first time on the 7th floor. Lily looked at him oddly but said nothing as they moved on. However, there was a brief flash of confusion as she glanced at his sheath holding the new guild dagger he had recently bought. Belle ignored the weird feeling returning as he got his head in the game. Daedalus Street, oh tilde. TCH. I can't believe I'm wasting my time out here. Came the irritated voice of Beat Loga, who trudged past several wooden inns in an otherwise poor district. Oh come on, Beat. You weren't doing anything anyway since everyone left your poor lonely tail for the dungeon. Aren't you glad to be going out on a date with your smoking hot goddess? Like hell I am. Loki cackled as she led the werewolf through the impoverished road of Daedalus Street, practically skipping as they headed for their intended destination. While Finn and most of the other executives were out in the dungeon earning money to pay off recent debts resulting from their most recent expedition, the goddess and Beat were out to investigate something they had received recently. A letter. The werewolf had nearly gone ballistic when the item had randomly stabbed his head the other day. But before tearing apart what he had assumed was yet another piece of sick fan mail asking to see his feet, he had caught a scent from the letter itself, making him hesitate. Just enough not to completely decimate it. The smell had been weak yet vaguely familiar, inciting Beat to tear it open and see what the hell it was about. Imagine his surprise to read someone claiming to know about some plant monsters in the sewers. Loki. Beat called to the call in pure seriousness, making her smile freeze. You sure we can? Trust that note. This seems suspicious as fuck. Loki's smile grew as she fully turned back to him. That's why you're here, Beat. If there's anything fishy, then you'll sniff him out. Cats sniff fish. Beat scowled as he followed the goddess through streets nearly barren of people. And what? If this is all some kind of trap? Loki didn't even look back at him. Don't worry, I got other kiddos waiting for us nearby. Sure enough, Loki and Beat arrived at an alleyway and found 4 people waiting. Oi, Gareth. Sorry about whisking you up on your drinking day. Loki waved as she approached. If YA feel bad, then buy me a drink after this is over. The level 6 dwarf huffed with crossed arms, though with no real annoyance. Same for the rest of you. Sorry about calling you up on short notice, but I figured this is all we need. Loki addressed the level 4s present. If what you told us is true, then it's only natural we act on it. Alicia Forestlight, orangish gold-haired elf, nodded. It's no problem, Loki. Anna Kitty Autumn, a black-haired catgirl just past her shoulders, smiled. Understandably. Ow, are you sure I should be here, though? Raoul Nord, a human with shorter black hair, hesitantly pointed at himself. Don't go doubting yourself, lad. There's a reason Finn has you captain of the 2nd string. Gareth chuckled, yet Raoul still looked unsure. Is this all of us that's going? Anna Kitty asked curiously. Yup. Whatever those Violas are, they should only be level 3 at most, so if anything, this is overkill. But you never know. Loki grinned with a thumbs up. Now let's go. I want to beer. Back in time to give AIS a big ol' kiss when she returns from the dungeon. The group sweat dropped but complied, with the armored Gareth leading the way while the others remained around Loki as they entered an empty square between multiple buildings, with a metal door at the end. As they approached the door, Beat growled as he angrily sniffed the air. What's up, Beat? You catch scent of Alicia's panties. Loki cheekily grinned. Like hell. Beat shouted while the mentioned elf blushed at Loki's question. I'm picking up the same smell from the letter. Aho, that's a promising start. It at least proves our little messenger was actually here. Loki smirked. I'm surprised you actually took some mysterious letter so seriously, Loki. Gareth admitted, as he grabbed the iron door and effortlessly opened it, leading into a stairwell. Beat said the scent on it was familiar, and we all know that's got to mean something coming. From the lonely pup who only hangs out with the strong kids. Loki chuckled, earning a glare from the werewolf. So at most, it's probably from someone we know rather than nobody. The group entered the spiraling stairway leading into the sewers, with Anna Kitty and Alicia holding lanterns to light the area while Loki provided noises in the air. I've been doing a little poking around ever since that new species of monsters popped up and attacked the girls at the monster feria. The goddess put a hand to her face, slightly obscuring her gaze. It went and hurt little Lefia and tried to hurt my AIS tan. An evil grin full of teeth formed as Loki opened devious eyes. I'm gonna drag out whoever made them bloom and make him pay for it. Raoul shivered at the look on his goddess. While she may seem foolish most of the time, she never makes idle threats. I hear that. Gareth nodded in support as his grip on his axe tightened. No one hurts their familiar and gets away with it. I was already looking near this area the other day, but then lo and behold, we get some info, literally thrown at our doorstep. You did mention a letter. How much did it tell you? Anna Kitty asked as the group finally reached the bottom of the stairs, ending up in some rather clean-looking sewers. Loki's expression returned to its natural cheer as she reached into her shorts and pulled out a folded paper. Quite a bit. How to get here, the monsters being at least level 3, and they even called them Violas. The sender gave them a name. Raoul pointed out, holding his sword at his side as they made their way along the pathways. That, or they had already known it. Alicia frowned, scanning the area with her own blade. Out. Like they know a lot more than they let on. Loki finished with a smirk. Well, they were definitely here. Beat clicked his tongue, remembering the letter, interrupting his nap. It's faint, but their scent is still around. Great. Lead the way, Beat. Loki beamed with a thumbs up. Just follow your nose. What followed was about 30 minutes of trekking through a labyrinth of paths that Beat led them through, following the scent he picked up while the others followed. But despite how deep they traveled, the only monsters the group encountered were a few raider fish foolishly trying to ambush them from the water, resulting in them quite literally being slapped away without effort. There's been a whole lot of nothing so far, Anakitty remarked quietly in the echoing tunnels. You sure the letter was telling the truth? Loki shrugged. The only way to find out is to see where it ends. Conveniently enough, it wasn't even a minute later when the group came upon an obvious set of double iron doors. Looks like someone's been here, Gareth noted, pointing at markings on the dusty floor, showing the doors had been recently dragged open. His statement was only confirmed as Beat walked to the doors and opened them up to reveal yet another source system lit up by magic lamps. This one was not only older but with the whole floor flooded. Well, isn't this fishy? Loki hummed, peering down at the faint lights ahead. Magic lamps. Perfectly working in a place that shouldn't be in use. Is there supposed to be water here? Raoul asked, uneasily looking down at the flooded ground. Doubt it. Anakitty frowned. Gareth sighed as he looked down at the steps leading to the water. Ain't nothing worse than the feeling of wet shoes. He muttered, yet stepped down into the shin-deep water. We're going to keep going. Alicia frowned. TSK, it's just some water. Beat scoffed as he stepped down into the water after Gareth. On the other hand, Loki turned to one of the girls with puckered lips. Kitty, carry me. She cutely begged while making grabby hands at Anakitty. No, I'd rather not get groped. The cat girl deadpanned as she stepped into the water. An immediate denial. How mean. Alicia, you carry me. The elf was already following her female companion, completely ignoring her goddess as she held her lantern forward. Loki slowly turned to Raoul, giving him a set of puppy dog eyes. The young man sighed in defeat, putting his sword away and kneeling down. Yay. I knew I could count on you, Raoul, she cheered as she climbed onto his back, leaned her head close to his ear with a smirk, and whispered, as a reward, I'll sneak some of Anakitty's panties to you. The man's face burst with red. I don't need them. Loki cackled while the others glanced back at her with tired expressions. The group moved on to the distant sound of rushing water, following Beat as he sniffed the air. You think the guild ever checked down here, or just our messenger? Loki asked out loud. I can still smell traces of multiple people in the air, but the water's mucking things up, so I can't tell much more than that, Beat answered. Aho? Now the question, where does our messenger stands with them? Loki hummed. After another few minutes, the Loki familiar reached a large opening in the wall that was the source of all the rushing water. Beat's eyes became sharper as his wolf ears shot up. You hear something ahead? Gareth asked, noticing Beat's change in composure as he stepped in front of him. Can smell him too. Faint scent of people, but something definitely not. Looks like we found the jackpot. Loki hummed. Anything serious? Doubt it. Beat said as they all moved forward again. The group entered a large room faintly lit by magic stone lamps, hearing distant signs of growling on the darker end. This is. Alicia started while looking around. We're in a reservoir. Anakitty realized. Look alive, kiddos. This is where they said they'd be. Loki said right before the growling got louder. Heads up, lads. Gareth shouted, pointing his axe forward as rapid slithering sounds headed towards them. Raoul put Loki down just as the monsters reached them, revealing several heads. Of the same plant monster the goddess remembered seeing at the monster feria. That's them. Take 'em down, kiddos. Loki pointed with a cheeky grin as the monsters roared and sped forward. What followed was what could hardly be called a battle at all. Sure, Beat had some trouble, actually dealing lasting damage to the plants since they are resistant to blunt attacks, but between him using a magic sword into his mithril boots to power up his kicks and Gareth's overwhelming brute strength behind his own attacks, the level 4s didn't even need to contribute as all the plant monsters were decimated. Gareth sighed as he heaved his large axe over his shoulder, looking around at the crushed or burnt heads of the violas. That was anticlimactic. I hoped this be a bit more exciting. That just means our little messenger was telling the truth after all, Loki said, crossing her arms with a frown. But nothing we found points out who's pulling the strings behind these new species. Their magic stone colors are the same as the one Tyon pulled from the new species on the 50th floor. They are most likely made by the same source. Alicia pointed out, holding one of the ominous yellow magic stones. That's kinda what we already assumed. Loki rubbed her chin. Take a look around and see if you can find anything else. Following her instructions, the group split up to different corners of the room, with Beat, lazily kicking one of the Viola's heads away. Loki scratched her head as she went over what they knew so far. Someone was creating new species of monsters and had sent them to cause terror to the general public. Not only that, it's possible the person or group involved has power backing them up if they were somehow able to make or send them past the 50th floor of the dungeon. And then there's their little messenger, who knows the names of these Violas and where they were, even showing signs that they must have been in here themselves. But what did that mean? You don't just randomly head into a saw for fun unless you're some stupid kid, Loki sighed. Sniff asterisk. The goddess turned to Beat, who was sniffing the air again in the center of the room. Expression serious. He then crouched down and looked at something, prompting Loki to skip over and look over his shoulder. On the ground lay a small spot of dried blood. Oh, looks like someone didn't make it out unscathed. Taking a clear sniff of the substance, Beat's pupils shrunk. No shit. He seethed. That's why it's familiar. Loki raised an eyebrow, waiting for the level 5 to elaborate as he turned to her with a glare. The scent on the letter. It's him. The rabbit kid we found on the 5th floor. Loki's eyes shot wide open. You sure? Beat nodded, bringing a sinister grin on the redhead. Now, ain't that interesting? Tilda, Arario's dungeon 7th floor, or Tilda. Effect, paralysis has activated. Effect, bleed has activated. Your foe will lose 1% of health each second. Effect, paralysis has activated. Bell slashed through the armored skin of killer ants like they were butter, severing heads and other limbs as he flew across the azul-lit dungeon floor. Dual-wielding Rasaka's fang and his new guild dagger, he effortlessly carved through the monsters at blurring speed for a level 1 adventurer, with any ants surviving the first slash either getting paralyzed or erupting blood from several parts of their body. Slashing through 3 more killer ants in quick succession, Bell slid to a stop and deactivated sprint, releasing a small sigh of disappointment. This is too easy. With his improved body condition, recent growth, and Rasaka's fang, killing monsters was practically child's play for him. So much so that the 7th floor didn't feel much different from previous ones besides the monsters. Having Lily with him only further made things simple by moving dead monsters out of the way, leaving less clutter to get in the way of his fighting. It didn't feel like where he should be at all. Bell-sama. Bell turned back to the stack of monsters Lily had piled up, the small girl staring at him in shock. Was that magic? But I didn't even hear a chant. Hey! The boy raised an eyebrow. Magic. Lily looked at him like he had grown a second head. The electricity and excessive bleeding I saw happen to the monsters. Oh, that. Bell chuckled as he held up Rasaka's fang. It's my dagger doing that. Lily's eyes dilated. That came from your weapon. Bell tried to ignore how her gaze zoned in on his blade with something other than awe. Yeah, it's not that surprising, is it? Weapons can have special effects, can't they? Lily looked at him in blank disbelief. Bell-sama, Lily has never heard of a weapon having magical special effects like that. The closest thing to it would be a magic sword, but those are weapons meant to fire bursts of magic and break instead of as actual blades. What? Bell stared dumbly at the girl. What? He repeated. But aren't there enchantments and other things you can put on a weapon? Isn't that common? Lily nodded. Yes, for the highest quality first-class weapons. And even then, they are always granted common features such as the unbreakable Durandal attribute or high magic conductivity, not anything your weapon can do. Oh Hestia, that means I said something I shouldn't have. Ow, wow. Bell panicked internally. Sure, he had a feeling of Rasaka's fang's high quality, but he didn't know just how unique its existence was. He gave an awkward shrug and smiled at Lily. The more you know. The girl was dumbstruck by his attitude. He's carrying such an incredible weapon and isn't even aware of how unique it is. Anyway, Bell tried to move along the conversation. Let's start picking up the magic stones. Blinking out of her dumbfounded state, Lily realized that she had broken character. Sorry Bell-sama. Allow me. With that, the two proceeded to carve out all the monster stones from the surrounding corpses, with Bell attempting to make conversation as they did so. So what familiar are you in, Lily? Are you sure they'll be all right with you working with someone not part of it? Pulling out a stone from a killer ant, Lily's expression grew solemn. Lily is part of the Soma familiar. And you don't have to worry, they and Godsoma don't really care for her much. They see her as small and weak, a burden. Even if Lily asks them to form a party, they wouldn't say yes. Bell paused in his collecting, briefly glancing at the girl in sad sympathy. He could see forlorn defeat in her eyes, the gaze of a girl shunned within her own familia. He can understand how it feels to be shunned away. He remembered how he had been shunned from every familia he had tried to enter, thinking of him as a useless kid more than anything. Lily feels so uneasy at home that she moves from one into another, but she's nearly out of money now, so she's really in Belsama's debt for hiring her, she said, turning back to Bell with a happy smile. The boy returned the smile with his own. Think nothing of it, Lily. And you don't have to address me with Sama. You can just call me Belsama. Lily's insistent tone caused his smile to drop, replaced by confusion as the girl turned to him with a tired look. That won't do. It goes the professionalism of my contract with you. What? Bell frowned. Why is that professionalism so important? Lily sighed as she got back to collecting. Lily has the label of a supporter, someone who only carries the bags while brave adventurers fight monsters in the front lines. In the eyes of adventurers, we supporters are nothing but parasites, so it would be arrogant for Lily and other supporters to ask to be addressed in equal recognition as adventurers. If I ever tried it with others, then no adventurers would ever employ Lily. Bell's eyes widened in horror. What? That's Dash. The way it is. Lily finished for him, giving him a sad smile. Lily knows that Belsama is a kind man, but what must be done must be done. So Lily knows it might be selfish to ask this of you, but please accept it for me, okay? Bitter. That was how Bell felt about everything he just heard. He knew Orario wasn't kind to the weak. He learned this when first arriving in the city, trying to join a familia, only to get rejected time and time again for his young appearance. Bell had learned firsthand that Orario wasn't the utopia that he had assumed it would be. But to think adventurers would be so selfish and arrogant as to act prejudiced against the supporters, making their lives easier in the dungeon. It wasn't fair. I'm sorry, Lily. You don't deserve how they treat you, Bell said truthfully, bringing a look of surprise to the girl. But if it makes you feel better, I'll always be glad to work with you, no matter what. Lily stared at him as he said these words, only to sadly smile. Thank you, Belsama. There was something in her gaze Bell couldn't quite place. It was a defeated look of acceptance, as if she didn't expect them to work together again or just didn't believe him at all. Why was that uncomfortably weird feeling returning again? By the way, Belsama. Lily lifted her voice to hold some cheer, perhaps to ease him. Ah, you really a rookie. Even with your unique weapon, you killed all those monsters quite easily. Oh, yeah, I am. I guess my weapon does help me a lot, but I really am still a rookie. Bell answered honestly, trying to mimic that cheer. It really is an amazing weapon, Where did you get it from? For a second, Bell saw a flash of something in Lily's eyes, which only worsened the discomfort in his gut. And yet, he weakly smiled as he ignored it once again. I got it from killing a monster. But he also found himself not answering as earnestly as before. Lily was feeling as confused as she was frustrated. When she approached the rookie adventurer in the morning, she had expected things to go as they usually did, maybe even easier. To sweet-talk the boy who had no clue how the world really worked, who would no doubt end up just like the others the moment the arrogance of an adventurer took hold of him like everyone else. She'd stick with him as he took down monsters, wearing him out while lowering his guard with her petite appearance and venomously sweet words until she could steal the dagger that had easily chipped through her previous employer's sword. It should have been simple, waiting back and pulling dead monsters to the side until she found her opening. And yet, she had watched Bell slash at least 4 different groups of killer ants with his daggers, treating the rookie-killing monsters like they were just a chore for him to get through. So many things didn't add up about the white-haired adventurer she was accompanying, the first one being, she didn't remember him looking so handsome. It ashamed Lily that she had been so caught off guard by Bell's looks. He looked like a natural playboy but better, compared to how obviously scummy previous good-looking men she'd known were. There was an air of innocence and youth around Bell that seemed dangerously appealing. But it had contributed to Lily thinking this would be another easy mark for her, for She had expected this boy to be a fool who would turn arrogant and self-centered as other good-looking ones before him had. She thought she could use his naivety in her favor and act all cutesy to snatch the dagger when he tired himself out, but that brought up the second thing that confused her: how high his abilities seemed to be. The two of them had already been in the dungeon for at least 2 hours, but Belle didn't show a single sign of slowing down. Not only that, but his weapon made killing monsters look practically effortless, especially with that terrifying paralysis and bleeding effects done to any enemies surviving a first slash. It left Lily's mind in tatters. What kind of weapon even is that? And this only leads to the third thing she can't understand. Where in Gakai does he keep storing it? She'd been trying to figure that out so she could swipe it later, but whenever Belle put away his weapon, it was always out of sight where she couldn't see. She hadn't seen any kind of sheath for it, so she had assumed that he stupidly put it into his backpack at first, but then he suddenly had it in his hand again without even opening his backpack up. What's going on? Lily, is that all you're eating? The disguised Paolum blinked as she realized she had been deep in her thoughts. She and Belle were seated next to each other on a picnic blanket eating their lunches, which only consisted of jerky and bread for her. And as for Belle, wait, how did he carry all those Jagamarukans on him? She's only been getting more confused the longer she's around him. Seeing her staring at the bowl of potato treats on his lap, Belle smiled, grabbing one of them and handing it to her. Hey! She blinked several times at the offered food. No, Belle-sama, Lily doesn't need dash. Asterisk grow wall. Asterisk. Her face turned red to her ears in mortification while Belle's expression turned smug. How dare he? And yet, she didn't say anything as the boy put 2 Jagamarukans in her hands, his smile softening as he did so. Fuming, Lily angrily turned away and bit into one of the treats. Why does it taste so fresh? Why is it so warm and delicious even though they've been in his backpack for 2 hours? How does Belle even store them in his small pack? Why is he so handsome? Why is he so nice? Why is everything about him so weird? With her escalating questions only making her feel frustrated, Lily needed all her willpower to calm down and enjoy the treats in her hands. She couldn't be thrown off right now. She had to save any questions she asked to learn more about Belle's dagger. Speaking of which, it should be a good time to ask more about it while her employer was in a happy mood. Swallowing the warm, steaming potato treat, Lily innocently tilted her head as she turned back to him. Belle-sama, isn't it dangerous for you not to carry your dagger in a sheath? Where do you even keep it? She watched Belle pause just as he was about to bite into one of his potato treats, a slight frown forming on his face. For a second, Lily worried that she might have come off as too obvious, but the boy chuckled before turning to her with amusement. He then playfully put a finger to his lips in a shushing motion. That's a secret. Lily wanted to tear her hair out. Tilda, Gid Pantheon afternoon, O Tilda. Returning from their dungeon dive, Belle and Lily went to the Guild Pantheon to trade in their rather impressive collection of magic stones, which included even a few monster drops. Lily opted to wait outside while Belle entered the guild building, trying so hard to disregard the looks he was getting from the few female adventurers and guild employees. Hey, is that Belle? He ignored the whispered scream of one of Aina's co-workers, the pink-haired Misha, who gawked at him as he went to an exchange booth with a male operator. Please split the earnings equally into 2 bags, Belle requested politely, earning a nod from the tired-looking human who received the magic stones and started calculating them. As he waited for their loot to be exchanged, Belle thought back to Lily, wondering why she had kept her head down and put her hood tighter around it when they left the dungeon. Like she didn't want to be noticed. Belle felt conflicted about the girl. He'd been ignoring many things he'd been feeling about her. In the dungeon, the way she had repeatedly glanced at his dagger, recalling each question or mention she made about it, and how similar she was to the Paolum from the other day. But Belle didn't want to think badly of her, especially when it's clear she's only working as a supporter out of desperation to make some sort of living. Sure, call him naive, but he believed Lily when she said that her familiar didn't treat her well, that supporters are treated like parasites. He couldn't just turn her away after a slight bad feeling. He'd tried to help her at the very least by showing her that she'd always have someone to turn to for work. Because what kind of hero would he be to not help someone in trouble? A few minutes later, Belle was outside, seated across Lily with 2 bags of vallis between them. Both were staring at the gold with wide eyes. F40,000 vallis. They uttered at the same time. That's incredible, Belsama. You made more than a 5-man party of level 1 adventurers would make in a day. Lily squealed. And this is only our first day working together, too, Bell grinned. To think that when he first started as an adventurer, he would have been lucky to make even 2,000 vallis in a day. And he had earned nearly twice as much vallis than he'd recently been making by himself. Okay, Belsama. Let's split the loot. Bell looked at Lily again, finding her posture and expression suddenly wary. Does she think he'll take all their earnings for himself or something? The thought gave an implication Bell didn't like. He grabbed one of the bags holding half of their vise and happily handed it to Lily. Here you go. Thank you for your hard work. Hey. The girl confusedly received the bag while Bell innocently smiled at her. Belsama, why are we splitting it evenly? Aren't you gonna try and take it all for yourself? Bell's eyes widened in dismay. Oh gods, he was right. Lily, is that what everyone you've worked with before did? He asked softly, making the girl tense with wide eyes. That's dash. Lily lowered her head, hiding both her shame and anger. Why is he acting like he cares? Her hands tightened around her bag. Thank you for today, Belsama. She stood up and turned to leave, only for a hand to reach out and grab her wrist, making her flinch. This is it, isn't it? This is where the adventurer finally realized what he could get away with. To let his greed fuel him to take back the bag he had given her? But instead, she heard his soft-spoken, mature voice. Lily, I'm giving you half because that's just how important you were today. The Palum sharply turned around, looking at Bell like he was stupid, but the boy took it in stride. The amount of vallis I'm holding is more than what I'd normally make by myself, even after only keeping half of it. And the reason I was able to make this much is thanks to you. Lily's eyes widened, and Bell took a calm breath with a serious expression. Lily, I can only assume that the people you've previously worked with must have not been very nice. The girl would have snorted at his understatement had she not been entranced by his earnestly glowing ruby eyes. But I meant what I said in the dungeon. Bell got to one knee and took one of Lily's hands into both of his, making the girl's face flush as he gave her a luminous smile. I would love to work with you again, and I promise to always treat you right. You don't have a reason to, believe me, but I hope you'll at least give me the chance to prove that I'm telling the truth. Lily's heart rampaged in her chest as she internally screamed at Bell's incredibly handsome face. He can't just say something that sounds like a marriage proposal while holding her hand on one knee. He's playing with her. He's absolutely playing with her. She can't believe this. Innocent-looking boy is actually such a degenerate man. Playboy. Man-whore. Enemy of women. She should slap that sincere smile right off his face. And yet, Lily lowered her head with her face red up to her hidden ears. You're weird, Belsama. She received an awkward chuckle. My goddess tells me that I'm a little special. So, will I see you tomorrow? Bell returned, with a hopeful voice. Lily weakly nodded. The girl ended up leaving with her arms cradling the bag of vallis Bell had given her. So she'll be seeing him tomorrow. Well, she hadn't figured out how to take his weapon yet, and he still seemed to have no idea what she had been trying to do. So it only makes sense for her to stick around until she finds the opportunity to steal it. And the higher income didn't hurt, too, so it only makes sense. Our pal Lum has left the party. Interesting. Bell watched Lily leave as the system message appeared. So it's automatic. It must have to do with a person's intent on accompanying me. But can I be the one to invite others instead? Bell was incredibly curious about what other features the party mechanic had, but nothing else had popped up during his time with Lily. A part of him had been nervous about a screen appearing in front of her face, but nothing had occurred. He softly smiled as he watched Lily disappear, feeling both glad and relieved that she had agreed to work with him again. In truth, he had a bit of an inkling of what she wanted based on what he noticed, but he didn't mind. It's not like he'll make it easy for her anyway. If anything, it'll probably keep Lily coming back, that and the amount of money they made together in just one day. So, hopefully, he could get to know her better while showing that he genuinely wants to help her. See you tomorrow, Lily, Bell muttered as he turned around and entered the guild pantheon. Again, he headed for the receptionist's desk, where he saw Aina and her co-worker Misha. whispering to each other. I'm telling you, Aina, your favorite adventurer turned smoking hot. You can even see the muscles under his shirt. Misha, can you stop saying stupid things like that? RIT's inappropriate. Besides, people don't just transform like that. Wait, so you're denying that but not that he's your favorite? Cease. Hi, Miss Aina. Bell cut in as he showed up at the front counter. Hearing his voice, Aina squeaked with a light blush before turning to him with a composed smile. Oh, good evening, Bell. Her words died the moment her gaze settled on the boy, where her mouth turned dry as it dropped open with her eyes dilating. B, Bell. The beautiful half-elf turned red all the way to her pointy ears. Something akin to a strangled cry emitting from her as both hands slapped over her mouth. Various muffled squeals and other noises were quelled under her hands as she stared at Hao. Bell's long-sleeved black shirt hugged his defined, muscled frame, even with his new armor somewhat in the way. See, I told you, Misha declared with a grin of victory before putting an arm on the counter and leaning forward, wiggling her eyebrows at a surprised Bell. So what's cooking good? Looking? Huh. Bell was caught off guard by the blatant flirting from the pink-haired woman, nervously gulping down saliva. I wanted to talk with Miss Aina. He jumped as Misha slammed her fist on the counter, head hanging and already crying. Damn it all. Right when you became my type of hunk, too. Can I at least get a squeeze in? Misha. Aina's hands dropped from her mouth as she shouted in outrage. Stop that. That's harassment. I'll report your misconduct to Royman. Misha pouted as she lifted herself from the counter and sulkily turned around, an arm wiping her teary eyes. Fine. I'll be happy for you, Aina, but I hope you'll at least give me the juicy details later. Misha. Aina screamed as the pink-haired girl left to drown her sorrows away, leaving Bell and the half-elf alone. The former felt flustered and confused, while the latter felt mortified and embarrassed. That was something. Why, yeah. Aina looked down with a deep blush. Bell, She forced herself to look up at his mature, handsome face, struggling to form words as her eyes took in all his changes. The two had been at the same height, but now Bell had 2 inches over her in addition to his sharper face and the outlined muscles under his black shirt. His eyes even had a new calmness and maturity in them despite the same bright, optimistic light they always held. Rather than a young, attractive boy, he now looked like a young, attractive man. Oh, gods. Aina quivered. The boy she had thought of as a cute, innocent ball of youth had suddenly become so much more, and it left her feeling complicated. What happened to you? She finally managed to ask. Already understanding what she was asking, Bell gave a sheepish shrug. Woke up like this in the morning. It just sort of happened. Aina looked at him incredulously. Just happened. I really can't explain it. Even I was shocked when I woke up and looked at myself in the mirror. You. Aina held her head in her hands, struggling to understand how such a transformation could happen and trying to cope with just how stunning Bell looked now. Seeing her steaming head and spiraling eyes, Bell quickly steered the conversation to another topic. Oh, I managed to get a supporter today. Her name is Lilaruka, and she's part of the Soma. Familiar. The Soma familiar. Aina repeated, the tidbit of information calming her but making her suddenly look much more concerned. Oh, is there a problem with them? Bell asked, noting her unease. They are familiar focused on dungeon exploring, and they also sell alcohol. That much is normal, but they all seem to be so desperate, like they are always pushing themselves to the limit. Bell frowned, recalling how greatly Lily needed work. Is the rest of her familiar the same as? Facing money issues. But that wouldn't make sense with what Lily had told him about being shunned by them. Wouldn't a familiar suffering financially be more opted to work together? And then there's their god, Soma. Aina reached under the counter and pulled out a file, opening it up and reading its contents. His familiar has quite the large member base, so it seems like he's highly worshipped, yet no one knows much about him, good or bad at all. His famous for having no communication with the other gods and has never even shown up at a god's banquet. Bell didn't know what to think of that, but he noted it for later. What did you think about this Lilaruka, Bell? Aina asked, looking back up at Bell, only to blush and look away as she saw his handsome face again. As for Bell, He frowned as he recalled the odd behaviors he had noticed from Lily so far, but he put those aside for the more concerning things. She's an amazing supporter and helped me make over twice the Valis than what I usually make in the dungeon alone. But he looked down, recalling the defeated look on the girl. I think she's struggling. She doesn't seem to think fondly of adventurers, and she made it sound like she's been treated unfairly just for being a supporter. Is it true, Miss Aina? Supporters really scorned by adventurers. Oh, Belle. Aina sighed sympathetically. I'm sorry you have to learn this, but yes, full-time. Supporters are deemed lower in status than adventurers. It's usually the weakest people who become them. Not everyone can become strong, even with a blessing. To be honest, failed adventurers are likely to change to full-time supporters and easily become targets of contempt. Belle's hands balled into fists. Called failures, even by their own familiars, who are supposed to be their families. He couldn't leave Lily alone, not after hearing that. For now, giving her fair share of Valis and treating her right was the best he could do until she opened up to him. Thank you, Miss Aina. I learned a lot. Belle smiled softly at the woman, making her heart skip a beat from the alluring expression. I'll make sure to treat Lily fairly. All right, you do that. The half-elf stammered, looking everywhere else but at him. Oh, by the way, about the dungeon. All embarrassment ceased into a pool of dread. Belle, Aina robotically turned a dead gaze at the now nervous boy. Please don't ask me what I think you're gonna ask. Can I take the test for the 8th floor? The woman groaned and put her face in her hands. You've been on the 7th floor for 1 day, Belle. It felt too easy. And I mean really easy. I didn't even sweat after killing a monster party. I promise that after I pass the test, I'll just try out the 8th floor, and if it's anything even close to tough, I'll stay in the 7th. Beale. Aina lamented as she tiredly looked up at the boy, only to freeze at what she saw. Puppy-dog eyes. Please. Guh. Unknown to Belle, his new looks made the face potent, dealing twice the damage to Aina as she flew back and collapsed to the ground with her hands over her heart. Miss Aina. Dangerous. Aina would never be able to deny Belle anything after this day. Chapter end notes. Okay, so a few things. First off, this chapter had originally been so much larger than what you just read, and I ended up deciding to cut it off at the 10,000 words point like usual and use the rest of what I had written so far for another chapter. Sorry, Belle was supposed to have gotten his magic at this point, but I had really just added too much to it, sorry. And the reason I didn't just keep going until I reached that point is because my last quarter of school starts tomorrow, and it'll be the busiest quarter I'll ever have. So I probably won't even be able to finish another chapter through these next months. I'm talking about 2 Writing 101W classes, which are upper division writing classes. But with extra work, an upper division Old English writing class, and then a statistics class. This is going to suck, but once I'm done, I'll just have some summer classes. Waiting before I'll finally graduate. Woohoo. But yeah, don't expect another chapter of anything for at least a few months, which I guess it doesn't even change my usual schedule while in school. Next thing to note, I originally had an initial plan of Butterfly affecting Belle to somehow avoid so many characters until after he had leveled up, but that'd kind of defeat the purpose of him meeting characters like Ryu and growing close with them in the first place. Not to mention, I really wanted to write the cast's reactions to Belle's new Chadness. You'll see him at the Hostess of Fertility in the next chapter. I actually had about 3,000 words of that written already before cutting out for the next chapter, but it should also be when Belle finally gets his magic and speeds things up a little. Hopefully you liked how Belle acted around Lily. I tried to make it clear that while his intuition and general senses are sharper now, he's still the Belle that doesn't immediately think bad things of people. He's definitely more aware, though. Hope I wrote that well. I think that should be it for now. I'll probably come back and add more to the notes if there's anything else. I hope you enjoyed reading, and until next time. End notes. I'm honestly really proud of how I wrote this chapter. To me, it feels like everything that happened felt natural and flowed well. I hope it was the same for all of you. Oh, and I hope the formatting of the system notifications was good, because I made it so they centered the page to better fit the aesthetic of the system itself. Let me know if that looks good for you. And as always, if you want to see this continued, Leave me comments letting me know. I'll be posting this in fanfiction.net too, and if one of the two sites gets enough comments, I'll continue it for the other one too. Have a nice day. Please drop by the archive and comment to let the creator know if you enjoyed their work. And that's all for today, folks. The next part is on its way, so unless you want to be that one person who hears about it last, like and subscribe now to stay ahead of the game. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. It's about to get epic. Thanks for listening. Catch you in the next chapter.